Hello everyone and welcome back to Sleepless Cosmos. Here on this channel, I share real-life scary stories and strange things that happen to help you relax and fall asleep. Before we start, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment and let me know where you are watching from now. Find a comfortable place to sit back and let's begin. My name is Sarah Chen, and I've been fixing computers for 15 years. Not the kind you have at home, the big ones that keep banks running and websites working. I'm what they call a senior network administrator, which sounds fancy, but really means I'm the person who gets called at M when something breaks. Every month, I have to update all our servers. It's boring work, but it pays the bills. The company gives me a 4-hour window AM to AM on Tuesday nights when nobody's using the systems. I do it alone because honestly, I work better that way. No small talk, no interruptions, just me and the machines. Our office is on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Minneapolis. During the day, it's full of people in suits talking about money and investments. At night, it's just me, the security guard downstairs, and about 200 servers humming away in their climate-controlled room. The server room is my second home. I know every machine by name literally. We call them things like MPLS Web 01 and MPLS TB07. I've memorized which rack each one lives in, what they do, and how long their updates take. Row A has the web servers, Row B has the databases, and Row C has the backup systems. It's organized, predictable, and safe. That Tuesday started like any other. January in Minnesota means snow, and we had a blizzard coming in. The weather report said 8 inches by morning. I didn't care, I'd be inside all night, and the building has backup power. I grabbed my usual supplies, thermos of coffee, energy bars, and my maintenance checklist printed on actual paper. Old school, but computers can't crash paper. I badged into the building at 1:55 a.m. The lobby was empty except for Mike, the night security guard, reading a paperback novel behind his desk. The elevator ride to the 14th floor was quiet, just a hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of snow hitting the windows. The server room badge reader beeped once. Green light, door unlocked. Everything normal. The room hit me with its familiar wall of white noise cooling fans, hard drive spinning, network switches blinking their little LED lights. The temperature was exactly 65 degrees, just like always. I checked the environmental display. Humidity at 45%. Power load at 67%. All good. I had 47 servers to update that night. Dell PowerEdge machines, mostly. The firmware updates would take about 45 minutes each if I did them one at a time, but I could run several at once. My plan was to start with Row C, then move to Row B, and finish with Row C. If everything went smoothly, I'd be done by 5:30 a.m. with time to spare. I set my phone on the desk next to the main console. Full signal, battery at 89%. The building's intercom system crackled to life. Mike doing his hourly security check. Floor 14. Server room, all clear, he announced to nobody in particular. I waved at the security camera in the corner out of habit. The first server update started at 2:03 a.m. I logged into MPLS Backup 01, downloaded the firmware file, and began the flash process. The progress bar crawled forward. 5%, 10%, 15%. I opened my logbook, a simple spiral notebook where I tracked everything by hand. 2:03 am MPLS Backup 01 firmware update started. Expected completion, 2:48 am. This was my routine. This was my normal. This was the last normal thing I remember clearly. The first weird thing happened at 2:31 am. I was watching the progress bar on MPLS Backup 01 when it suddenly jumped from 34% to 100%. Just like that. No warning, no error messages, just done. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then checked my watch. The update had taken 28 minutes instead of 45. Huh? I said out loud. My voice sounded strange in the quiet room. I ran a quick diagnostic on the server. Everything looked normal. The new firmware was installed correctly. All systems were running fine. Maybe the update file was smaller than usual, or maybe Dell had improved their process. Technology gets faster all the time, right? I moved to the next server in Row C. MPLS Backup 02 started its update at 2:35 am. This time I watched the progress bar more carefully. It moved normally for the first few minutes. 8%, 12%, 19%. Then, around 25%, it started moving faster. Not jumping like before, but definitely faster than it should. The update finished at 2:51 a.m. only 16 minutes. Something was off, but I couldn't figure out what. The servers were working fine. The updates were installing correctly. Everything was just faster. I checked my phone. 2:52 a.m. But when I looked at the wall clock above the main console, it showed 2:47 a.m. I looked back at my phone. Still 2:52 a.m. I looked at the wall clock again. Now it showed 2:48 a.m. Different clocks. I told myself. The wall clock probably needed a new battery. I made a mental note to mention it to facilities in the morning. But the feeling in my stomach said something else was wrong. I walked over to the environmental controls to check the building's master time. The display showed 2:53 a.m. 3 different times on 3 different systems. That was abnormal. Our network time protocol should keep everything synchronized to the second. I tried to focus on the work. MPLS Backup 03 was next. I started the update and opened my logbook to write down the time. But when I looked at the page, there was already an entry. 2:47 a.m. MPLS Backup 03 firmware update started in my handwriting. But I hadn't written that. I flipped through the pages. There were entries for servers I hadn't touched yet. Updates marked as completed that I hadn't started. All in my handwriting. But I had no memory of writing them. My hands were shaking a little as I closed the notebook. I took a deep breath and counted to 10. Stress could make you forget things. I'd been working a lot of overtime lately. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. I decided to focus on one thing at a time. The server update was still running. I watched the progress bar. 31%, 35%, 41%. Normal speed this time. That was good. That was the progress bar jumped 100. I hadn't been looking away. I hadn't blinked. I was staring right at it when it happened. 1 second, it was at 41%. The next second it was done. The timestamp showed. The update had taken 12 minutes total. I stood up from my chair and walked around the server room. Just to move. Just to think. The familiar hum of the machines was still there, but it sounded different somehow. Quieter maybe. Or maybe the quiet was louder. I couldn't tell. I checked my phone again. No signal. The bars were full. But when I tried to call my supervisor's voicemail, nothing happened. The call wouldn't connect. I tried texting my boyfriend. Working late. Servers acting weird. The message showed as sent. But when I checked my sent folder, it wasn't there. The badge reader on the server room door beeped. I looked over, but nobody was there. Just the red light blinking, like someone had tried to badge in but didn't have access. I walked over and checked the access log on the little screen. It showed 23 entries for the night, but I had only badged in once. The log showed the same badge number mine swiping in and out over and over. Times that didn't make sense. 2:17 am, 2:23 am, 2:31 am, 2:38 am. I'd been in the server room the whole time. I hadn't left. I walked back to my desk and sat down hard in my chair. The server room felt bigger than usual, like the walls had moved back a few inches. The ceiling seemed higher. The familiar layout looked almost right, but not quite. I opened my logbook again. More entries had appeared. Servers I definitely hadn't touched. Updates completed at times that hadn't happened yet. The handwriting was mine, but the words felt like someone else's thoughts. "This is stupid," I said. Out loud. "I'm just tired." But my voice echoed in the room, and I'd never heard an echo in the server room before at 3:02 a.m. I watched myself walk past the security camera. I was sitting at my desk, looking at the monitoring screen that showed feeds from all the cameras in the building. The server room camera was in the bottom right corner. I could see myself, brown hair in a ponytail, red sweater, sitting in my chair. Normal. Then I saw myself stand up and walk toward row BN. But I was still sitting down. I looked at my hands on the keyboard, then back at the screen. The other me was crouched next to a server, connecting cables. I stood up fast, my chair rolling backward. I walked to row BN. Nobody was there. I looked back at the camera feed. It showed me sitting at my desk again, like nothing had happened. But I was standing in row BN. I ran back to the desk and rewound the camera feed. The timestamp showed 3:02 am to 3:04 am on the screen. I watched myself sit calmly in my chair for 2 minutes. No standing up, no walking to row BN, just sitting and typing. But I remembered walking to row BN. I remembered the feeling of my feet on the floor, the sound of my footsteps. I remembered looking at the servers and seeing that someone had been working on them. Fresh cable connections, panels that had been removed and put back. I checked my logbook. New entries. 3. O2 MPLS Web 01 through MPLS Web 05 firmware. Updates completed, all in my handwriting, but I hadn't touched those servers. I logged into MPLS Web 01 remotely. The firmware had been updated. The logs showed the update completed at 3:03 AM, 1 minute. A firmware update that should take 45 minutes had been done in 1 minute. The room felt wrong now, not just bigger, but like the angles were off. I walked from my desk to row up, counting steps. 12 steps, like always, but it felt like more. Like I was walking through thick air, or walking on a moving walkway that was going the wrong direction. I tried calling Mike, the security guard. The phone rang once, then went to a busy signal. I tried the building's main number. Same thing. I tried 911. The call connected, but all I heard was silence. Not even static, just empty silence like the phone was connected to nothing. My cell phone showed 5 missed calls from my supervisor, but it had been on silent, and I hadn't heard it ring. I checked the call log. The calls were all from 3:07 AM to 3:11 AM, but it was only 3:06 AM now. I listened to the voicemails. My supervisor's voice sounded strange, like he was talking underwater. Sarah, I got your email about the server issues. Call me back when you can. The network team is seeing some weird traffic patterns from your location, but I hadn't sent any email. I checked my sent folder. Nothing. I checked the server logs. No unusual network traffic. Everything looked normal. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The snow was falling, but it was falling upward. White flakes drifting up from the street toward the sky. I watched for a full minute, then blinked hard and looked again. The snow was falling down, normal, when I turned back to the server room. All the lights were different. Not the color, they were still the same white fluorescence. But the shadows were wrong, like the light was coming from somewhere else, somewhere that didn't exist. I sat back down at my desk and opened my logbook. The pages were full now. Entries for every server in the building. Updates completed. Diagnostics run. Problems solved. Hours of work, all in my handwriting, all with timestamps from the last hour. According to my notes, I had finished the entire maintenance window. Every server updated, every system checked, every report filed. But I only remembered starting 3 servers in row C. I looked at the wall clock. 3:11 AM. I looked at my phone. 3:43 AM. I looked at the environmental system. 2:58 AM. 3 different times, and they were getting further apart. I stood up and walked to the center of the server room. The humming sound was still there, but underneath it, I could hear something else. Voices, quiet voices, like people talking in another room. I couldn't make out the words, but they sounded like technical conversations, people discussing servers and networks and problems I was supposed to be solving. I followed the sound toward row BN. The voices got clearer. I could hear my own voice, talking to someone. The firmware update on MPLS DB03 failed. We need to roll back to the previous version, but I was standing alone in row BN. Nobody else was there, and MPLS DB03 was in row A, not row BN. I walked to row C. The voices followed me, always just out of reach. I could hear myself having conversations I didn't remember, solving problems I hadn't encountered, working with people who weren't there. The server room felt like it was breathing. The walls seemed to expand and contract slightly, like the whole room was alive. The temperature was still 65 degrees according to the environmental system, but I was sweating. I looked at the security camera in the corner. The red light was blinking, which meant it was recording, but the light was blinking in a pattern. 3 short blinks, 3 long blinks, 3 short blinks. SOS in Morse code. I hadn't programmed it to do that. I didn't even know how to program it to do that. At 3:47 AM. I found myself in a conversation I wasn't having. I was standing next to MPLS DB07, holding a network cable, talking to someone who wasn't there. But I could hear both sides of the conversation. My voice, asking about IP configurations. Another voice, professional, technical, familiar, answering my questions. The subnet mask needs to be adjusted. The other voice said, change it to 255, 255, 255, 240. That'll give us 14 usable addresses. I heard myself reply, is that enough? It should be sufficient for the current requirements. I was having a detailed technical discussion about network configuration, but I was standing alone in the server room, holding a cable, talking to empty air. And the strangest part was that the conversation made perfect sense. The other voice was giving me good advice, solving real problems, I looked at my hands. They were moving, disconnecting cables, making changes to the server configuration. But I wasn't telling them to move. My hands were working independently, following instructions from the voice I could hear but couldn't see. I tried to stop moving. I tried to put the cable down, but my hands kept working, making precise adjustments to the network connections, like someone else was controlling them, like someone else was using my body to do the work. The server room had changed again. The rows of servers extended further than they should. Row A, row B, row C, and now row D and row E. Rows that didn't exist in our building. Servers I'd never seen before, with host names I didn't recognize. I walked down the new rows, my feet moving without my permission. Each server was running, lights blinking, fans spinning. They were all perfectly maintained, all running the latest firmware, all configured exactly right. Someone had been taking care of them. Someone who looked like me. I found her in row G. She was crouched next to a server, running diagnostics on a network card. She looked exactly like me, same height, same hair, same red sweater. But she was more focused than I'd ever been. More skilled, more confident. She looked up at me and smiled. You're early, she said. Early for what? The shift change. I'm almost done with the maintenance window. I stared at her. She was me, but she wasn't me. She knew things I didn't know, had access to servers I'd never seen, was solving problems. I didn't understand. What is this place? I asked. The server room, she said, like it was obvious. Where we work, where we've always worked. She stood up and walked past me, toward rows of servers that extended into the distance. Hundreds of servers, maybe thousands, all humming quietly, all working perfectly, all maintained by versions of me. I followed her through the endless rows. I saw myself everywhere, crouched next to servers, typing at keyboards, running cables, solving problems. Dozens of me, all working efficiently, all knowing exactly what to do. How long have you been here? I asked. Since 2:00 a.m., she said. Same as you, same as always, but it's been hours, has it? She stopped walking and looked at me. Check your phone. I looked at my phone. 3:02 a.m., the same time I'd seen myself on the security camera, the same time this had all started. That's impossible, I said. Time works differently here, she said. We can get more done. We can solve problems before they happen. We can maintain systems that don't exist yet. She was right. I looked around at the endless server room, at all the versions of me working calmly and efficiently. No stress, no confusion, no weird time jumps. Just pure, perfect work. This is what you wanted, she said. A place where you can work without interruptions, where you understand every system, where nothing ever breaks, where you're always in control. She was right. It was what I'd wanted. But it was also wrong. This wasn't my server room. These weren't my servers. This wasn't my life. I need to go back, I said. Why? You're more useful here. You're better here, because this isn't real. She smiled again. But this time it was sad. Real is overrated. Here, you can fix everything. Here, you're never confused or lost or behind schedule. Here, you're perfect. I looked at my hands. They were still moving, still working, still maintaining servers I'd never seen. But now I could feel them again. Now I could control them. I need to go back, I said again. Then go, she said. But you always know this place exists. You always know you could be here instead of there. Working perfectly instead of struggling. The endless server room started to fade. The rows of servers grew shorter, the lights dimmer. The sound of hundreds of cooling fans became quieter, more familiar. I was standing in row C, holding a network cable, looking at MPLS backup 01. The server room was back to normal. 3 rows, 47 servers, temperature at 65 degrees. But I could still hear the voices, still feel the pull of that other place where everything worked perfectly and time moved according to my needs. I looked at my phone. 6:03 a.m. I was sitting at my desk with no memory of the last 3 hours. According to my logbook, I'd completed the entire maintenance window. Every server updated, every system checked, every report filed. My handwriting, my notes, my signatures. But I only remembered starting the first few servers in row C. I checked the server logs. All 47 servers showed successful firmware updates, completed between 2:00 a.m. and 6:00 a.m. The timestamps were normal. The procedures were correct. The results were perfect. Better than perfect. I'd solved several problems I hadn't even noticed. Before, I looked at the security camera footage. It showed me working steadily for hours. No weird behavior. No standing around confused. No walking to non-existent rows. Just me, doing my job efficiently and professionally. But I remembered the other server room. The endless rows. The perfect systems. The versions of me who knew exactly what to do. I remembered the conversation with myself. The choice to come back. The feeling of time bending around the work. I printed out the security footage and looked at it frame by frame. At 3:02 a.m., I paused and squinted at the screen. For just a moment, it looked like there were two of me, one sitting at the desk, one standing by the servers. But when I looked closer, it was just shadows and pixels. I packed up my equipment and headed for the elevator. In the lobby, Mike was still reading his book. He looked up when I walked by. "Good night, Sarah. Get some rest." "Thanks, Mike." "Hey, did you see anything weird on the cameras tonight?" "Weird how?" "I don't know. Just weird." He shook his head. "Quiet night. Just you and the servers." I drove home through the snow, thinking about what had happened. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd almost convinced myself it was just stress and fatigue, too much coffee, too many late nights, too much time alone in that quiet room. But over the next few weeks, things kept happening. I'd start a server update and find it completed before I finished typing the command. I'd walk into the server room and find problems already solved, cables already connected, systems already optimized. My logbook would fill itself with entries I didn't remember writing. I started recording audio logs during my maintenance windows. Long, detailed descriptions of everything I was doing, every decision I was making. But when I played them back, the recordings were always shorter than I remembered, and my voice sounded like I was reading from a script. I requested to move to day shift maintenance. When my supervisor asked why, I said it was for efficiency reasons. Better to work when other people were around, easier to coordinate with vendors, less chance of making mistakes when I was tired. He approved the request, but he seemed confused. "You always said you worked better alone," he said. "You said the night shift was perfect for you." "I still work in the same server room, but now there are other people around. Co-workers, vendors, support staff. The room feels normal during the day, just 3 rows of servers, familiar layouts, predictable problems. But sometimes, when I'm working alone for a few minutes, I catch a glimpse of something more. A 4th row that shouldn't be there. A server with a host name I don't recognize. A shadow that moves independently of the lights. And sometimes, when I'm really focused on a difficult problem, I can hear her voice. The other me, the better me. The one who knows exactly what to do. She's still there, still working, still maintaining that perfect system where time bends to fit the work. I never stay alone in the server room for more than a few minutes now, and I never work the night shift, because part of me is afraid I'll find that other place again. That endless room where everything works perfectly and time moves according to my needs. And part of me is afraid I'll want to stay. The maintenance window is still there. Every Tuesday from 2:00 a.m. to 6:00 a.m. But now someone else does the work. Someone who doesn't mind being alone with the servers. Who doesn't mind the quiet. Who doesn't mind the way time can stretch and bend in that room. I still update the service, just during the day now. But I never stay late, and I never work alone. Because I know what happens when you spend too much time in a place where reality is just a suggestion. Where time is just another system to be optimized. I know because I've been there. And I know I could go back anytime I wanted. But I also know that wanting to go back is exactly why I can't. I should have quit that job the night my watch stopped working. But I didn't. And now I can't sleep without checking all the logs twice. My name is Marcus Rodriguez, and I've been working security for 8 years. Not the more cop kinda. Real deal. Army MP training. Government clearance. The works. When Chemtech Industries hired me to watch their chemical plant outside Phoenix, I thought it would be easy money. Big facility, good pay, mostly quiet nights. The plant sits on 340 acres of desert, 20 miles from anywhere that matters. During the day, it's all noise and steam and trucks coming and going. At night, it's just me and the hum of the machines. I like it that way. Been through a messy divorce, and the quiet gives me time to think. My job is simple. Walk the perimeter every 2 hours. Check the sensors. Make sure nobody's trying to get in where they shouldn't. The whole route takes exactly 23 minutes in summer, a bit longer in winter when I'm not sweating through my uniform. I've got 12 checkpoints around the fence, each one with a scanner that beeps when I wave my card at it. The equipment is standard stuff. Motorola radio that connects to central control. Heavy-duty flashlight that could stop a truck. Digital scanner that tracks my route. Nothing fancy, but it all works. Has to work. This place makes chemicals that could level half of Phoenix if something went wrong. I know every inch of this facility. Every camera angle, every sensor placement, every maintenance schedule. When pump station 3 makes that clicking sound, it means Jake forgot to tighten the housing again. When the south fence alarm goes off for no reason, it's because the wind is blowing sand against sensor 12. After 8 years, you learn these things. The plant runs 24/7, but the overnight shift is skeleton crew. Just me outside, 2 guys in the control room, and maybe a maintenance worker if something needs fixing. Most nights, I barely see another person, just me, the desert, and the sound of traffic from Route 60 in the distance. Thursday nights are usually the quietest. No weekend rush, no Monday morning panic, just another ordinary night where nothing ever happens. The kind of night where you can walk your route, check your boxes, and count the hours until dawn. I started my 11:45 p.m. patrol like any other. Temperature was 89 degrees hot for November, but that's Arizona for you. Clear sky, no wind to speak of. Perfect conditions for an easy walk. I grabbed my gear, tested the radio, and headed out checkpoint door 7. Control. This is Rodriguez starting perimeter walk. I called in. Standard procedure. Copy that, Marcus. All clear on the boards. I clipped the radio back to my belt and started walking. The fence stretches out in both directions, 12 feet. Of chain link topped with razor wire. Motion sensors every 50 feet. Cameras at the corners. Nothing gets through the perimeter without us knowing about it. The first 3 checkpoints went smooth. Scanner beeped right on schedule. No alarms. No problems. Just the usual sounds of the plant running its overnight cycles. I was thinking about overtime pay, about how the extra money would help with the lawyer bills. At checkpoint 4, I stopped to tie my boot. The concrete walkway was warm under my knee, still holding heat from the day. Above me, the sodium vapor lights cast everything in that familiar orange glow. 20 feet away, the fence marked the edge of our little world. Beyond that fence is nothing but desert, scrub brush, sand, and rocks stretching to the mountains. During the day, you might see a coyote or roadrunner. At night, it's empty. Has to be empty. The closest neighbor is 5 miles away, and they're asleep by 10. I stood up and kept walking. The scanner felt solid in my hand, the radio quiet on my belt. Everything normal, everything the way it should be. That's when I reached checkpoint 7, and everything started to go wrong. The scanner wouldn't read at checkpoint 7. I waved it at the post 3 times. But nothing, just that plastic in my hand. Come on, I muttered, checking the battery display. Full power. I tried again, holding it closer to the tank. Still nothing. This had happened before. Desert dust gets into everything, messes with the electronics. I wiped the scanner on my shirt and tried once more. This time it beeped. Finally, I marked the time and kept walking, but something felt off. The night was too quiet. I stopped and listened. The plant was humming like always, but something was missing. The traffic noise from Route 60. Even at midnight, you can usually hear the big rigs rolling past. Tonight, nothing. I checked my radio. Control. This is Rodriguez at checkpoint 7. You guys hearing any traffic reports? Static. Then. Say again, Marcus. Route 60. Is there construction or something? It's really quiet out here. No reports. Everything normal on our end. I shrugged and kept walking. Maybe it was just a slow night for truckers. It happens. At checkpoint 8. I noticed my flashlight beam looked weak. Not dead battery weak, but like the light was getting absorbed by something. I tapped it against my palm, and it seemed to brighten up again. Getting old, I said to myself. Time to request new equipment. The walk between checkpoints 8 and 9 should take 3 minutes. I know because I've timed it hundreds of times. Tonight, it felt like 10 minutes. I kept checking my watch, but the hands were moving normal. Maybe I was just tired. At checkpoint 9, my radio crackled with static. I tried to call in my position, but all I got was white noise. The static cleared up after a few seconds, and I completed the call. Control. Rodriguez at checkpoint 9. All clear. Copy that. Any problems? Just some radio interference. Might be solar activity. Roger. We'll make a note. I was halfway to checkpoint 10 when I noticed the fence looked different. Not wrong exactly, just farther away than usual. The distance from the walkway to the fence is exactly 15 feet. I know because I measured it during training. Tonight, It looked more like 20 feet. I stopped and counted my steps to the fence. 15 steps, just like always, but it still looked farther away. Eyes playing tricks, I said out loud. Night shifts will do that to you. After a while, your brain starts seeing things that aren't there. But when I turned to head back to the walkway, the processing units looked different. 2. The big tower that should be straight ahead was off to the left. The pump station that should be behind me was over to the right. I stood there for a minute, trying to figure out what was wrong. Then I realized I was looking at the same buildings, just from a different angle, like I'd walked to the fence at the wrong spot. But that was impossible. I'd been walking the same route for 8 years. I could do it in my sleep. I pulled out my compass, old-fashioned magnetic one I carry as backup. The needle was pointing 15 degrees east of where it should be. Not north, but northeast. That was strange. Compasses don't just stop working. I tapped the glass, and the needle swung back to normal north. Then it drifted east again. What the hell? I tried my radio again. Control, this is Rodriguez. Is there any electrical work going on tonight? I'm getting some weird readings out here. Static. Then, electrical work. Negative, all systems normal. Roger that. Just checking. I put the compass away and kept walking. Maybe there was a solar storm or something. That could mess with magnetic fields, right. At checkpoint 10, the scanner gave me trouble again. It took 4 tries to get a reading. When it finally beeped, the display showed checkpoint 15 instead of 10. Stupid thing's broken, I muttered. I'd have to report it when I got back, but as I walked toward checkpoint 11, a strange taste filled my mouth. Metallic, like sucking on a penny. The kind of taste you get right before a thunderstorm. I looked up at the clear sky and saw nothing but stars. My radio started crackling again. This time, when I tried to call in, all I got was static on every channel. The interference lasted almost a minute before it cleared up. Control, Rodriguez at checkpoint 10. Radio's acting up. Copy that. Signal's clear on our end. I checked. My watch, 12:07 a.m. The walk was taking longer than usual, but I couldn't figure out why. I wasn't walking any slower. If anything, I was moving faster because all the equipment problems were making me nervous. T checkpoint 11. My flashlight died completely. Not dimmed dead. I shook it, and it came back on. Then it died again. I hit it against my palm, and it flickered back to life. This is getting ridiculous, I said. That's when I noticed the temperature had dropped. My skin was covered in goosebumps, and I could see my breath in the air. The thermometer on my belt showed 81 degrees, but it felt like 70. I was starting to get worried. All these little problems were adding up to something bigger. Equipment doesn't just malfunction for no reason. Not all at once. I looked around the perimeter, trying to spot anything unusual. The fence looked normal. The sensors weren't showing any alarms. The cameras were pointing in their usual directions, but something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. I tried the radio again. Control, this is Rodriguez. I'm having multiple equipment failures out here. Scanners giving wrong readings. Flashlights cutting out. Radios full of static. Might need backup. Marcus, we shook all systems normal. Your signal's clear. Copy that. But I'm telling you, something's not right. I was about to continue the patrol when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The maintenance shed that should be 30 feet away was right next to the fence. Not moved, I could see the original location where it should be. But there was a second shed, identical to the first, sitting where no shed had ever been. I stared at it for a full minute. 2 sheds, exactly the same. One in the right place, one in the wrong place. That's when I knew this wasn't equipment failure. This was something else entirely. I walked toward the second shed, my flashlight beam shaking in my hand. Up close, it looked exactly like the real maintenance shed. Same green paint, same rust spots, same dent in the door where Jimmy backed into it with the forklift last month, but it couldn't be there. I'd walked this route 1,000 times. There was nothing but empty ground at this spot. I reached out to touch the door, and my hand passed right through it, like touching air. The shed was there, but it wasn't there. What the hell? I jerked my hand back and stumbled backward. The shed flickered, like a bad TV signal, then disappeared completely. Just gone. Nothing but empty ground where it had been. I stood there shaking, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Hallucinations. Had someone spiked my coffee? But I felt fine. Alert. More alert than usual, actually. I pulled out my radio with trembling fingers. Control, this is Rodriguez. I need backup out here. Something's wrong. Static. Nothing but static. I tried different channels. Emergency frequency. Maintenance channel. Company frequency. All static, my cell phone showed no bars, no signal at all. That was impossible. The closest tower was only 2 miles away. I started walking faster, heading for checkpoint 12. The scanner wouldn't work at all now. The screen was blank, like it had lost power. But the battery indicator still showed full charge. My watch had stopped at 12:07. The second hand wasn't moving. I tapped the crystal, and it started ticking again. Then it stopped. 12:07. The fence beside me started to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. But it was the middle of the night, and the air was cold now. So cold I could see my breath. I touched the fence, and it felt normal. Solid chain link, rough under my fingers. But when I looked at it, the metal seemed to ripple like water. This isn't happening, I said out loud. This isn't real. But it was real. I could feel the cold air, smell the desert sage, hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Everything was real, except the things that couldn't be real. I started running toward the control building. The perimeter warp could wait. I needed to get inside, needed to talk to someone who could tell me I wasn't losing my mind. But as I ran, the distance to the building seemed to stretch out. The more I ran, the farther away it looked, like running in a dream where you can't reach your destination. I stopped and turned around. The fence was right behind me, exactly where it should be. But the control building was impossibly far away, like I was looking at it through the wrong end of a telescope. All my equipment was going crazy now. The radio was producing sounds I'd never heard before, not static, but something that sounded almost like voices. Voices speaking in no language I recognized. My flashlight was flashing on and off by itself. The beam was changing colors too. White, then yellow, then blue. Colors that shouldn't come from a regular flashlight. I pulled out my compass again. The needle was spinning in circles, never stopping, never pointing in any direction for more than a second. That's when I saw the lights in the sky. They started as tiny dots, like stars, but they were moving. Not airplane moving too fast, too precise. They moved in perfect geometric patterns, making right angles at impossible speeds. One light broke away from the group and came down toward the plant. As it got closer, I could see it wasn't a light at all. It was a shape, maybe 30 feet across, perfectly round, with no visible means of propulsion. It moved without sound. No engine noise, no wind, nothing. Just silent movement through the air. The object stopped about 100 feet above the fence, directly over where I was standing. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like being paralyzed. But I could still breathe, still think. A beam of light came down from the object, not a searchlight, something else. The light was solid, like a pillar of glass. It touched the ground right next to me, and I felt the hair on my arm stand up. Everything electronic on my belt stopped working. The radio died completely. My flashlight went out. Even my watch stopped ticking, but I could see perfectly. The beam of light was somehow illuminating everything around me without creating any shadows. The fence, the ground, the buildings, all visible in detail, but lit by impossible light. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. I was standing there like a statue, unable to even turn my head. But I could feel something scanning me, looking through me, reading me like a book. The sensation was horrible, like having your thoughts invaded by something that didn't understand human minds. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. Images flashed through my head, not my memories, someone else's, or something else's. Pictures of the plant, from above, like satellite photos. Pictures of me walking my route, night after night, year after year. Pictures of other people, other places, other times. Then the images stopped, and I felt something touch my mind directly. Not thoughts, but something deeper, like fingers made of electricity, poking around inside my skull. The presence in my mind was vast and cold. It studied me the way a scientist might study a bug under a microscope. Curious but not caring. Intelligent but completely alien. I felt it taking things from my memory. Not stealing, copying. Like it was downloading everything I knew about the plant, about security procedures, about human behavior. The process felt like it lasted hours, but my stopwatch still showed 12:07. Then, suddenly, it was over. The light beam disappeared. The object in the sky shot away faster than anything I'd ever seen. My equipment started working again, and I could move. I fell to my knees, gasping. My body was shaking so hard I could barely hold myself up. The metallic taste in my mouth was so strong, I thought I might throw up. I looked at my watch. 12:07. Still 12:07. But when I looked at the fence, I wasn't where I'd been before. I was standing next to the control building, 50 yards from where the encounter had happened. I didn't remember walking there. I didn't remember moving at all. Control. I pounded on the door. Let me in. Something's out there. The door opened, and Jake looked out at me with sleepy eyes. Marcus, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Check the cameras, I said, pushing past him. Check the sensors. Something was out there. Something big. Jake went to the monitors. Everything looks normal, man. All sensors green. No alarms. You sure you're okay? I looked at the screens. The perimeter looked exactly like it always did. No lights in the sky. No objects. No beams of light. What time is it? I asked. 12:15. Why? I looked at my watch. Now it showed 12:15. Like nothing had happened, but something had happened. I could still feel the presence in my mind, like an echo of something vast and cold. I need to file a report. I told Jake. Something happened out there. He poured me coffee from the pot. They keep going all night. Take a minute. You look pretty shook up. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but even as I said it, I knew how crazy it sounded. Lights in the sky. Objects that moved without sound. Equipment that failed and then worked again. Maybe you should see the company doctor, Jake suggested. Stress can do funny things to your mind. I'm not stressed. I'm not crazy. Something was out there. But as I sat in the control room, surrounded by normal lights and normal sounds, I started to doubt myself. Had I really seen those things? Or was Jake right about stress? My divorce had been rough. The legal bills were eating up my savings. Maybe I was cracking under the pressure. I need to finish the patrol, I said, standing up. Marcus, you don't look so good. Why don't you call it a night? I am fine. Just spooked myself. That's all. I went back outside. But everything felt different now. The air was wrong too thick, too charged with electricity. The shadows from the sodium lights fell at weird angles. I started walking the perimeter again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Not from the sky this time. From everywhere. T checkpoint 12. The scanner worked fine. Perfect reading. No delays. Like it had never malfunctioned. But when I looked at the display, it showed a location I'd never seen before. Instead of checkpoint 12, it read subject 7742 perimeter guard. I stared at the screen. The text flickered and changed back to checkpoint 12. But I knew what I'd seen. My hands were shaking as I continued the patrol. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every sound seemed louder than it should be. The desert wind carried sounds that didn't belong, whispers in languages I didn't recognize. T checkpoint 1. I stopped and looked back at the control building. Through the windows, I could see Jake sitting at his desk, reading a magazine. Everything looked normal, but as I watched, Jake stood up and walked to the window. He looked right at me and waved. I waved back. Then I saw another Jake, still sitting at the desk, still reading his magazine. To Jake's. One at the window, one at the desk. Both real, both impossible. I blinked hard, and when I looked again, there was only one Jake. The one at the desk. The one at the window was gone. I'm losing it, I whispered. I'm completely losing it. But I wasn't. Deep down, I knew I wasn't. Something was happening to me, to this place, to reality itself. I felt the presence return. Not in the sky this time, but inside my head. That same vast, cold intelligence, poking around in my thoughts. This time, I didn't fight it. I let it explore. My mind let it take whatever it wanted. Fighting had been useless before. The presence seemed pleased by my cooperation. It showed me things, images that flashed through my consciousness too fast to understand. Other worlds, other beings, other realities. I saw myself from outside, a small figure walking around a tiny human facility on a backwater planet. I saw the Earth from space, blue and fragile and insignificant. I saw time itself, stretching out, like a river, and I was just a single drop in that river. The presence was studying us. All of us, humans. It had been watching for a long time, learning about us, preparing for something. I felt its attention focus on me specifically. It was curious about my role, my function. Why did I walk the same route every night? What was I protecting? What was I afraid of? I tried to show it my memories, my training, my job, my responsibilities. But the presence wasn't interested in those things. It was interested in something else. Something deeper. It wanted to know about fear, about how humans respond to the unknown, about how we react when our understanding of reality breaks down. I was a test subject. We all were. The presence was running experiments. seeing how we'd react to impossible situations, seeing how far it could push us before we broke. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't first contact. This wasn't some cosmic accident. This was deliberate, planned. We were being studied like lab rats. The presence sensed my understanding and seemed amused. It showed me more images, other people, other places, other experiments. Security guards like me, soldiers, pilots, ordinary people who'd encountered things they couldn't explain. All of us were part of a larger study, a decades-long research project to understand human psychology, human limitations, human potential. Some of the subjects had broken completely. Others had adapted, incorporated the impossible into their worldview. A few had become something more than human. Their minds expanded by contact with the presence. It was offering me a choice. I could return to my normal life, with only fragmented memories of this encounter, or I could accept the truth and become part of something larger. But the choice came with a price. If I accepted, I would never be fully human again. I would always be connected to the presence, always aware of the vast intelligence that watched our world. I thought about my life, the divorce, the bills, the endless nights walking the same perimeter. What did I have to lose? But then I thought about what I'd be giving up. My identity, my independence, my humanity itself. The presence waited patiently for my decision. Time seemed frozen, like my watch had stopped again at 12:07. Finally, I made my choice. No, I said out loud. I want to stay human. The presence seemed surprised. Most subjects, it implied, chose to join, to become part of something greater than themselves. But I was stubborn. I'd been a soldier, a security guard, a protector. I knew who I was, and I wasn't ready to give that up. The presence withdrew from my mind slowly, almost reluctantly. As it pulled away, I felt my memories of the encounter becoming fuzzy, dreamlike, but not gone, just distant. I found myself standing at the entrance to the control building. My watch showed 12:45. I'd lost almost 40 minutes. Jake looked up as I came in. How'd the patrol go? Fine, I said automatically. All clear, but it wasn't fine. It wasn't clear. Something fundamental had changed, and I wasn't sure what. The next morning, I tried to write a report about what had happened, but every time I started typing, the words wouldn't come. Not because I could remember everything, but because I knew no one would believe me. Equipment malfunction, stress hallucinations, fatigue-induced psychosis. That's what they'd say. That's what I'd say if someone else reported the same things. I wrote a simple report instead. Minor equipment issues during perimeter patrol. Scanner required multiple attempts at several checkpoints. Radio experienced brief interference. Recommend equipment inspection. They replaced my gear the next day. New scanner, new radio, new flashlight. Everything worked perfectly, but I started carrying backup equipment. An analog compass that couldn't be affected by electromagnetic interference. A mechanical watch that didn't rely on batteries. A small camera that used actual film instead of digital memory. The camera never worked during the encounters. The compass would spin wildly. The watch would stop at random times. But they were proof that something was happening. Even if I couldn't capture it, the encounters continued. Not every night, but often enough. Usually small things, equipment glitches, time distortions, glimpses of things that shouldn't exist. But sometimes bigger events. Objects in the sky, impossible structures that appeared and disappeared. Moments when reality seemed to bend around me. I requested backup for the perimeter patrol, but management said it wasn't necessary. Crime in the area was low, and I had a perfect safety record. Why waste money on extra personnel? I started volunteering for drug tests, random screenings, annual physicals, anything that might prove I wasn't using substances or having mental health issues. Every test came back clean. The other security guards started avoiding me. They'd heard rumors about my equipment problems, about how I kept requesting backup for mysterious threats that never showed up on the sensors. But I didn't care. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what was happening. The presence was still out there, still watching, still running its experiments. I was just one subject in a much larger study, but I was a subject who knew the truth. Sometimes, late at night, I could feel it scanning me, reading my thoughts, updating its files, adding new data to whatever database it was building. I learned to recognize the signs, the metallic taste in my mouth, the drop in temperature, the way electronic equipment would start behaving strangely when those signs appeared. I would stop and look up at the sky. Not in fear, I was past that, but In acknowledgement, a nod between test subject and researcher, the presence seemed to appreciate this. The encounters became less invasive, more like gentle check-ins. It would scan my memories, monitor my stress levels, observe how I was adapting to the ongoing contact. I was adapting. That was the strangest part. The impossible had become routine. I'd learned to function in a world where the rules of reality were more flexible than most people believed. My divorce was finalized. The legal bills were paid. I found a new apartment closer to the plant. My life was actually getting better, despite everything. Or maybe because of everything. The presence had shown me that human problems were small compared to the vast scope of the universe. My ex-wife, my debts, my mundane concerns, they were all just details in a much larger story. I was part of something bigger now, not by choice, but by circumstance. I was a witness to the fact that we're not alone in the universe, that somewhere out there, intelligence far beyond human understanding was watching us, studying us, learning from us. Most nights, I complete my perimeter patrol without incident. The scanner works, the radio is clear, and nothing unusual happens. Just another ordinary night at a chemical plant in the desert. But I know the presence is still there, still watching, still waiting for the next phase of its research, and I know that someday, maybe soon, the experiments will end. The presence will have learned everything it needs to know about human beings. I wonder what happens then. I wonder if we'll be ready. Until then, I walk my route. I check my equipment. I watch the sky. And I wait, because in 8 years of security work, I've learned that the most important part of the job isn't stopping threats from getting in. It's knowing when something's already inside. Something that's been inside for a long, long time. And tonight, like every night, I can feel it watching me through the darkness, waiting to see what happens next. My name's Dale Hutchinson, and I've been running freight for 12 years. Owner-operator. Got my own 2019 Peterbilt 579 Midnight Blue with chrome stacks that I polish every weekend. It's not just a truck. It's my office, my home away from home, and the machine that puts food on my table. That Tuesday night, I was hauling 34,000 pounds of manufactured goods from Denver to Sacramento. Nothing special electronics, mostly. The kind of load that pays the bills, but doesn't make you rich. I picked up the trailer Monday afternoon, ran my PRE trip inspection like always, and headed out on a route I could drive blindfolded. I-80 through Nevada is a trucker's highway. 4 lanes of straight asphalt cutting through desert that looks like the surface of Mars. Mile marker 47 to mile marker 320. I know every truck stop, every way station, every place where the state cops like to hide. It's boring, but boring. Pays. The clock on my dashboard read 3:20 a.m. as I rolled past mile marker 47. About 45 miles west of Winnemucca. I was running legal hours. My electronic logging device showed I had plenty of drive time left. 2 hours ahead of schedule, which meant I could grab breakfast in Reno instead of settling for vending machine coffee. My CB crackled with the usual night chatter. Eastbound big truck. You've got your ears on. Some driver looking for a smoky report. I keyed the MIC. Yeah, driver. This is the Blue Pete. Roads clean from Elko to your 20. Standard trucker talk. We watch out for each other. Out here, the coffee from the Elko truck stop was still warm in my thermos. Satellite radio was playing classic rock, some Eagles song about peaceful, easy feelings. My girlfriend Sarah's birthday was next week, and I was trying to figure out what to get her. She liked jewelry, but with fuel prices killing my profit margins, maybe something smaller this time. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly like it should be on a Tuesday night run through the Nevada desert. That's what made what happened next so damn terrifying. My truck was running smooth, all gauges in the green. The load was riding nice and stable, no shifting, no weird noises from the trailer. I'd done this exact run maybe 30 times in the past 3 years. Same route, same mile markers, same endless stretch of nothing but sagebrush and stars. The only thing on my mind was making good time and getting to Sacramento before the afternoon traffic got crazy. Just another night's work for a guy who hauls freight for a living. I should have paid more attention to the silence on the CB radio. The first sign something was wrong came from my GPS. I glanced down at the screen mounted on my dash, a good Garmin unit I bought specifically for trucking. It knew about bridge heights, weight restrictions, truck routes, reliable as sunrise. But the display showed I was at mile marker 52. I looked up at the green highway sign sliding past in my headlights. Mile marker 47. Stupid thing must be glitching, I muttered, tapping the GPS screen. but the unit looked fine. Signal strength was strong. Satellite connection solid. No error messages. I've been driving long enough to know that GPS units sometimes get confused, especially in remote areas. Cell towers are spread thin out here, and sometimes the satellite signals bounce weird of the mountains. Nothing to worry about. But then I noticed the road itself felt different. I-80 through this part of Nevada has curves. Nothing dramatic, just gentle sweeps left and right as the highway follows the natural contours of the desert. After driving it so many times, I knew exactly where each curve was coming. My body would lean slightly before my eyes even saw the turn ahead, except the road was staying straight. Dead straight. For 15 minutes, I hadn't touched the steering wheel except to make tiny corrections. In 12 years of driving, I'd never seen a highway section this straight for this long. My CB had gone quiet too. The last chatter I'd heard was maybe 30 minutes ago, another driver asking about construction near Reno. Since then, nothing. Just static. That was unusual for this stretch. I-80 was a major freight corridor. There should be drivers talking, sharing information about traffic, weather, courts. I keyed the MIC. Anybody got their ears on out there? This is the Blue Pete eastbound at the 52. Nothing. Just the soft hiss of static. The odometer was acting strange too. I'd been running at 65 miles per hour for the past hour, but the miles weren't adding up right. The numbers on my trip computer were clicking over slower than they should. At 65 miles per hour, I should be covering more than a mile per minute. But 5 minutes of driving was only showing 3 miles on the odometer. Maybe the speedometer was wrong. I pressed my foot down slightly on the accelerator. The needle moved to 68 miles per hour. But the scenery outside my windows didn't seem to change speed. The fence posts and mile markers were still passing at the same rate. I started looking for the familiar truck stop that should be coming up around mile marker 55. Big place diesel, restaurant, showers, parking for maybe 50 trucks. I'd stopped there dozens of times, but the horizon ahead stayed empty. Just more desert, more darkness, more perfectly straight highway. My coffee was getting cold, and I was starting to feel uneasy. Not scared, not yet, just confused, like when you walk into a room and forget what you came for. Except this feeling was about the whole world around me. I tried the CB again. Break 19. Anybody running eastbound on the 80? Looking for a radio check. Static. Nothing but static. And the quiet hum of my diesel engine eating up miles that somehow weren't adding up on my odometer. The highway kept stretching. Ahead, straight as a ruler, into the Nevada night. By 3:47 a.m. I knew something was seriously wrong. My GPS was having a complete meltdown. The screen kept showing recalculating route every few minutes, then displaying maps I'd never seen before, highways that didn't exist, exit numbers that made no sense. At one point, it showed me driving through the middle of Lake Tahoe, but the really weird part was the mile markers. I'd been passing the same numbers over and over. Mile marker 47, mile marker 48, mile marker 49, mile marker 50. Then, somehow, mile marker 47 again. I was sure I'd seen that exact sign, the one with the small dent in the lower right corner. At least 3 times, my trick computer was showing impossible numbers. According to the odometer, I'd driven 200 miles since leaving Elko, but according to the mile markers, I was still somewhere between 47 and 52. The math didn't work. Nothing was working. The CB radio was picking up stations from hundreds of miles away. I could hear truckers talking about weather in Colorado, traffic jams in California, construction delays in Utah. But when I tried to call out, nobody answered. It was like I was listening to radio signals from another world. Both my dashboard clock and my trip computer were showing different times. The dashboard said 3:47 a.m. The trip computer said 3:23 a.m. My cell phone, when I checked it, said 3:31 a.m. 3 different times, all on the same truck, all supposedly connected to the same GPS satellites. The fuel gauge was wrong too. I should have burned at least a quarter tank since Elko, but the needle had barely moved. My Peterbilt gets about 6.5 miles per gallon loaded. I'd been driving for hours, but the tank was still showing nearly full. The highway surface itself looked different in my headlights. Too smooth, too perfect. I couldn't see any expansion joints, no patches where road crews had made repairs. Just seamless black asphalt stretching ahead like it had been poured 5 minutes ago, and there were no bugs on my windshield. In the Nevada desert at night, driving through clouds of insects was normal. Your windshield got covered with splattered moths and beetles, but my windshield was clean. like I was driving through a vacuum. My satellite radio was receiving stations it shouldn't be able to get. Country music from Nashville, news from New York, even Spanish language stations from Mexico. The signal strength was perfect, but according to the laws of physics, those signals shouldn't reach this far. I tried using my cell phone to call Sarah, just to hear a familiar voice. No signal, not even 1 bar, but the phone showed it was trying to connect to towers in Kansas, Wyoming, places hundreds of miles away from where I should be. That's when I noticed the temperature. My outside temperature gauge had been reading 52 degrees when I left Elko. Now it read 52 degrees. It hadn't changed in hours, even though I'd been driving through different elevations, different microclimates. The desert temperature should fluctuate at least a few degrees, but the gauge was locked at exactly 52. I pulled off at what should have been a rest area near mile marker 60, but there was no rest area, just empty desert. My GPS showed I was parked at the rest area, but when I looked outside, there was nothing but sagebrush and darkness. When I got back on the highway, I was at mile marker 47 again. That's when I started to panic. The moment I realized I was trapped, really trapped, was when I heard my own voice on the CB radio. Break 19. Anybody running eastbound on the 80, looking for a radio check. Those were my exact words from 30 minutes ago. Same tone, same inflection, but I was hearing them now, broadcast from somewhere else, as if another version of me was driving another truck on another highway. I grabbed the MIC with shaking hands. Who is this? Who's using my call sign? Silence. Then static. Then my voice again. Anybody got their ears on out there? This is the Blue Pete eastbound at the 52. I wasn't just lost. I was caught in some kind of loop, like a record skipping, playing the same song over and over. The highway, the mile markers, the time, everything was repeating. My odometer now showed 400 miles driven since Elko, but the mile markers still said 47 to 52. I was driving hundreds of miles without going anywhere. The road surface started to look wrong in my peripheral vision. When I looked straight ahead, it was normal asphalt, but when I glanced to the sides, the pavement seemed to flow like black water, rippling and moving in ways that pavement shouldn't move. My truck's computer systems were responding to thoughts I hadn't spoken out loud. When I thought about checking my fuel level, the gauge display lit up without me touching anything. When I wondered about my speed, the digital speedometer flashed brighter. But the most terrifying thing was that I could see multiple versions of the same highway dotting my side mirrors. I could see I-80 stretching behind me, but I could also see it curving to the left, curving to the right, going uphill, going downhill, like looking at the same road through a broken prism, showing every possible direction at once. The sun should have been rising by now, but the sky stayed dark. According to my dashboard clock, it was 6:45 a.m. The sun rises around 6:30 a.m. this time of year, but there was no hint of dawn, no lightening of the eastern sky. I was driving through a place that wasn't quite real, on a highway that couldn't exist, in a time that had stopped moving forward. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. 12 years of driving, and I'd never been scared like this. Not of weather, not of mechanical problems, not of other drivers. This was different. This was the fear of realizing that everything you thought you knew about reality was wrong. The CB crackled again. My voice. Stupid thing must be glitching. The exact words I'd spoken when I first noticed the GPS problem. I was reliving the same moments, over and over, trapped in a loop of time and space that shouldn't exist. But somehow, I was aware of it. I could remember the previous loops, even as I was forced to repeat them. That's when I saw the lights ahead, not headlights. Not the lights of a truck stop or a town. Something else. Something that moved in ways that defied physics, stopping instantly, changing direction without slowing down, hovering without making any sound. And that's when I understood that I wasn't alone on this impossible highway. The next thing I knew, I was pulling into the familiar Winnemucca truck stop. The sun was rising. My dashboard clock read 6:45 a.m. The CB radio was chattering with normal morning traffic drivers talking about coffee, weather, the best route around construction in Reno. I sat in the cab for 10 minutes, trying to make sense of what had happened. My electronic logging device showed a normal night's drive. No anomalies, no missing time. According to the official record, I had driven from Elko to Winnemucca in exactly the time it should take. My fuel gauge showed the expected consumption. My odometer displayed the correct mileage. Everything was normal. I keyed the CB. Morning. Drivers. This is the Blue Pete. Anybody else have a weird night on the 80? Negative. Repeat. Smooth sailing all night. You having truck trouble? No, driver. Just thought I saw something strange. Roger that. Lot of strange things. In the desert at night. Probably just tired eyes. I completed my delivery in Sacramento without incident. Filed my paperwork. Got my bills signed. Headed home. Just another routine freight run, but it wasn't routine. Not really. I still drive I-80 through Nevada. It's my job. But now I pay attention to things I never noticed before. Mile markers, time stamps, the way the highway curves, how long it takes to drive between familiar landmarks. Most of the time, everything is normal. But once a month, maybe twice, I notice small things. A mile marker that seems to repeat. A stretch of road that feels too straight. A moment when the odometer doesn't quite match the time elapsed. Nothing dramatic, nothing I couldn't explain as fatigue or inattention. But I notice I've never told Sarah about the night. Never filed a report with the Department of Transportation. Never mentioned it to other drivers. Except in the vague way I did that morning in Winnemucca, because who would believe it? A highway that loops back on itself. Time that skips like a broken record. Mile markers that repeat. It sounds crazy. It sounds like the kind of story told by drivers who've been on the road too long, who've had too much caffeine and not enough sleep. But sometimes, when I'm driving through the Nevada desert at 3:20 a.m., I find myself checking the GPS more often, watching the mile markers more carefully, listening to the CB radio with extra attention, just in case, because I know that somewhere out there, on a highway that shouldn't exist, other drivers might be experiencing the same impossible night high. Trapped in loops of time and space, driving hundreds of miles without going anywhere, listening to their own voices echoing back from a future that keeps repeating the past. And if that ever happens to you, if you find yourself on a highway that doesn't follow the rules, just remember you're not alone. You're not crazy. And eventually, if you keep driving, you'll find your way back to the world that makes sense. But you'll never forget the world that didn't. I counted the same box of basketball 17 times that night. Same exact box, same scratch corner, same faded UPC sticker. But my scanner kept showing different numbers every single time. My name is Angela Foster, and I've been running the night shift at Megamart's distribution center for 7 years. 7 years of counting things in a warehouse the size of 4 football fields. 7 years of making sure every tennis racket, every pair of cleats, every foam finger ends up where it's supposed to be. It was 4:30 a.m. on a Wednesday when everything went sideways. The kind of morning where the coffee tastes like motor oil and your bones feel like they're made of lead. But I had a job to do. Section K needed its monthly cycle count, and I was the only one qualified to handle sporting goods. The warehouse stretched out in front of me like a canyon made of metal shelving. Rows and rows of bins reaching up to the ceiling, each one tagged with yellow labels that glowed under the fluorescent lights. K4700 through K4899. 200 bins to count in 2 hours. Easy work for someone who'd memorized every corner of this place. I clipped my scanner to my belt and pulled up the inventory sheets on my tablet. The voice-picking headset crackled to life in my ear. Good morning, Angela. Beginning cycle count for Section K. Please proceed to bin K for 700. Copy. That, I said to nobody in particular. The skeleton crew was spread thin tonight. Just 12 of us covering 280,000 square feet. Jimmy was running forklifts in Section C. Maria was handling receiving dock. Everyone else was scattered across the facility like seeds in a field. My footsteps echoed of the concrete as I walked toward the sporting goods section. The familiar hum of the ventilation system mixed with the distant beeping of forklifts. Temperature was steady at 62 degrees, just like always. Everything normal, everything routine. I've been doing this dance for so long I could count inventory in my sleep. Scan the barcode, verify the quantity, move to the next bin. The numbers had to match the computer system within a 2% margin, or corporate would want to know why. My quarterly bonus depended on keeping those numbers clean. Sarah's college tuition was due next month. $15,000 for her sophomore year at Georgia Tech. The money would come from this job, from nights like this, from counting other people's stuff while the world slept. I reached bin K for 700 and pulled out my scanner. A case of youth. Soccer ball stared back at me. The computer said there should be 24. I started counting. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 24. Perfect match. The scanner beeped as I locked the count. Bin K for 70 verified. Proceed to bin K for 701. This was my world. Rows of metal shelving under buzzing lights. the smell of cardboard and industrial cleaner, the weight of responsibility for making sure every item had its place. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work. Work that paid the bills and kept food on the table. I moved to the next bin, then the next. Baseball gloves, tennis shoes, swimming goggles. Each item had its proper place, its proper count. The system was perfect because people like me made it perfect. One scan at a time, one count at a time. The radio on my belt crackled every hour with check-ins from the crew. Sectioner clear, receiving dock normal. Break room coffee tastes like garbage. The usual chatter that kept us connected across the vast space. I was good at this job. Really good. My accuracy rate was 99.7%, the highest in the district. I knew which bins tended to have problems, which items got miscounted, which suppliers shipped short. I could spot a damaged barcode from 10 feet away. But that night, something was different. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The warehouse felt quiet. Too quiet. Even with the forklifts running and the ventilation humming, there was an emptiness in the air that made my skin crawl. I shook it off and kept counting. Just another night shift. Just another inventory cycle. Just another step toward keeping the lights on and my daughter in school. If I'd known what was coming, I would have walked out right then. But I didn't know. Nobody ever knows until it's too late. Part 2. When numbers leave first sign something was wrong came at bin K for 750. A simple box of basketballs. 12 regulation size. Orange with black lines. I counted this exact inventory 100 times. Before I scanned the barcode, the scanner beeped. The screen showed 15 basketballs. I counted them by hand. 12 basketballs. Exactly 12. I scanned again. 15. I counted again. 12. System error, I muttered, making a note on my tablet. Happens sometimes. Barcodes get damaged. Scanners get glitchy. Nothing I hadn't seen before. But then I got to K for 751. Tennis rackets. The system said there should be 8. I counted 6. I scanned the barcode. The screen showed 10. I counted again. Still 6. I scanned again. Now it showed 12. The voice-picking system crackled in my ear. Angela, please verify count for bin K for 751. I'm getting inconsistent readings, I said. Scanner might be malfunctioning. Please proceed with manual count, the system replied. But there was something off about the voice. A slight delay, like it was echoing from somewhere far away. I looked around the warehouse. The usual forklift noises seemed muffled, like they were coming from underwater. The fluorescent lights flickered, occasionally casting weird shadows between the shelving units. I tried to radio Jimmy. Hey Jimmy, you getting any scanner problems over there? Static, then his voice. But it sounded strange, distant. Scanner problems? What kind of problems? Inconsistent. Readings. Items showing different counts every time I scan. That's weird. Mine's working fine. You want me to come take a look? Now, I'll figure it out. Thanks though. But Jimmy's voice lingered in my head. It didn't sound right. Too flat. Too empty. I kept working, but the problems got worse. At K for 760, I found a bin that should have been empty according to the system. Instead, it was packed with boxing gloves. I scanned them. The screen showed 0 items. I counted the gloves by hand. 36 pairs. I scanned again. Still 0. This is insane, I said out loud. My voice echoed strangely in the empty aisle. The next bin contained soccer cleats. The system said there should be 48 pairs. I counted 50. I scanned the barcode. The screen showed 32. I counted again. This time I got 45. I scanned again. 61. My hands were shaking. Now, 7 years of doing this job, and I'd never seen anything like it. Equipment malfunctions were one thing, but this was different. This was like reality itself was broken. The voice-picking system buzzed in my ear. Angela, your count rate has decreased significantly. Please maintain standard productivity. The scanner's not working right, I said. I'm getting bogus readings. Please continue with assigned tasks. I looked down at my tablet. The inventory sheets showed normal data. Everything looked right on paper, but the scanner was giving me numbers that made no sense. And the things I was counting, they didn't match what the computer said should be there. I tried walking to the next aisle to clear my head, but the distance felt wrong. The aisle that usually took 30 seconds to walk stretched on and on. My footsteps echoed strangely, like I was walking through a tunnel instead of a warehouse. When I finally reached the next section, I checked my watch. Only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt like I'd been walking for 20. I radioed Maria at the receiving dock. Hey, Maria, what time do you have? 4:55 a.m. Why? I looked at my watch again. 4:55 a.m. That was impossible. I'd been working for over an hour, but only 25 minutes had passed. No reason, I said. Just checking. But Maria's voice sounded wrong too. Hollow, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. I went back to counting, but my heart was pounding now. The numbers weren't adding up. The time wasn't adding up. And the warehouse felt different. Bigger, darker. Like the walls had stretched while I wasn't looking. A TK for 780. I found something that made my blood freeze. A bin full of baseball bats. The system said there should be 24. I counted them. 24 exactly, but when I scanned the barcode, the screen showed 24 baseball bats in that bin, and another 24 in bin K for 781, and another 24 in bin K for 782. I ran to those bins. K for 781 was empty. K for 782 was empty, but the scanner said they each contained 24 baseball bats. The same baseball bats. The same exact bats I'd just counted in K for 780. I was starting to panic. This wasn't a system error. This was something else. Something wrong with the world itself. Part 3. The impossible count be the time I reached K for 800. I'd stopped trusting my own eyes. The scanner was showing me things that couldn't exist. Items in bins that were empty. Empty bins that were full. Numbers that changed every time I looked at them. I scanned a box of golf balls. The screen showed 48 balls. I opened the box. Empty. I scanned again. 96 balls. I looked in the box. Still empty. I counted the empty box. 0 golf balls. I scanned the empty box. The screen showed 140 for golf balls. This is impossible, I whispered. The voice-picking system buzzed in my ear. Angela, please report your current location. I'm at bin K for 800, I said, but the scanner's completely messed up. I need to get a replacement. Location confirmed. Please continue with assigned tasks. I looked around the warehouse. The aisles stretched away from me in all directions, but they looked wrong, longer than they should be. The ceiling seemed higher. The fluorescent lights cast shadows that moved when I wasn't looking at them. I tried to walk back to the break room to get a different scanner, but the path didn't make sense. I walked down an aisle that should have led to the main corridor, but it just kept going and going and going. I stopped walking and looked at my watch. 5:15 a.m. I'd been walking for 20 minutes, but I was still in the same aisle. The same bin numbers stretched out in front of me. K4800, K4801, K4802. I turned around and started walking back. But the bins going the other way showed the same numbers. K4800, K4801, K4802. I was trapped in a loop of inventory that shouldn't exist. I tried the radio again. Jimmy, are you there? Static. Then his voice. But it sounded like it was coming from a million miles away. I'm here, Angela. Where are you? I'm lost. I'm in section K, but the aisles don't make sense. Can you come find me? I'm looking for you. But I can't find section K. It's not on the map. That's when I felt the first wave of real terror. Section K was the biggest part of the warehouse. It was impossible to miss, unless I looked at my tablet. The inventory sheet showed section K clear as day. K4700 through K4899. 200 bins of sporting goods. But when I tried to access the warehouse map, section K wasn't there, according to the computer. I was standing in a place that didn't exist. I started running down the aisle, past bins that showed the same numbers over and over. My footsteps echoed strangely, like I was running through a cathedral instead of a warehouse. The fluorescent lights flickered as I passed under them. I reached what should have been the end of the aisle, but there was no wall, just more shelving, more bins, more impossible inventory stretching out forever. I pulled out my scanner and pointed. It had random bins. The screen showed items that couldn't be there. Thousands of basketballs, millions of tennis balls, infinite quantities of finite things. I scanned myself. The screen showed item not found. I scanned the floor. 1, 2 for 7 concrete tiles in stock. I scanned the air. Oxygen levels critical. Reorder immediately. The scanner wasn't reading barcodes anymore. It was reading reality itself, and reality was broken. I tried to call for help, but my voice echoed. Strangely, instead of bouncing off walls, it seemed to stretch out forever, getting fainter and fainter until it disappeared into some vast emptiness. That's when I saw them. Other workers, moving between the bins like they were shopping in a store, but they weren't part of my crew. I knew everyone who worked nights. These were strangers. I watched a woman in a Megamite uniform walk up to a bin and pull out a television. A 60-inch flat screen, but the bin was marked for golf tees, and it was only 12 inches wide. She placed the television in her cart and walked away. I ran to the bin. It was full of golf tees. I scanned it. The screen showed one television removed from inventory. I saw a man loading furniture into a forklift, couches and dining room sets. But we were in the sporting goods section. We didn't stock furniture. I checked the bins he was loading from. They contained fishing lures. The scanner showed the furniture being removed from inventory. Furniture that didn't exist from a department we didn't have. I tried to follow the man, but he walked through a wall. Literally through it, like the wall wasn't there. I touched the wall. It was solid, but I could see him on the other side, still loading. Furniture that couldn't exist. The voice-picking system crackled in my ear. Angela, you have exceeded your scheduled break time. Please return to your assigned tasks. I never took a break, I said. I've been working the whole time. Break time logged at 5:30 a.m. Current time, 6:15 a.m. Please resume counting. I looked at my watch. 5:45 a.m. But the system said it was 6:15 a.m. And it said I had taken a break I never took. Time was broken. Space was broken. The inventory was broken. And I was trapped in the middle of it all, counting things that shouldn't exist in a place that wasn't on any map. I don't know when I stopped being Angela Foster, night shift supervisor, and became something else. Something that existed only to count. The change happened somewhere between scanning the same box of ping pong balls for the 100th time and watching a coworker load impossible items into a cart that had no bottom. The warehouse had become infinite. I could walk in any direction and find more bins, more inventory, more things to count. The same items, but different. Baseball bats that were also fishing poles. Tennis balls that contained entire universes of smaller tennis balls. I scanned a bicycle. The screen showed 47 bicycles. I looked at the bin. One bicycle. I reached for it. My hand passed through it, like it was made of light. But when I scanned my hand, it showed bicycle removed from inventory. The voice-picking system had become my constant companion, not just giving me instructions, but talking to me, having conversations. Angela, you're doing excellent work tonight. What's happening to me? I asked. You're counting inventory. That's what you do. That's what you've always done. But this isn't normal. The numbers don't make sense. The numbers make perfect sense. You're just seeing them clearly for the first time. I tried to remember what normal felt like. Working a regular shift, going home to my apartment, talking to my daughter on the phone. But those memories felt like dreams, like stories someone had told me about a life I'd never lived. The only thing that felt real was the counting, the scanning, the endless inventory that stretched out in all directions. I found a bin that contained the entire warehouse. I could see myself in it, scanning items, looking confused. I scanned the bin. The screen showed one warehouse containing one Angela Forster. I reached into the bin and touched the tiny version of myself. She looked up at me with terror in her eyes. I tried to pull her out, but she was too small, too far away. I scanned myself again. This time the screen showed Angela Foster not in stock. I looked down at my hands. They were translucent. I could see through them to the concrete floor below. I was becoming part of the inventory, another item to be counted and catalogued. Other workers moved through the aisles around me. Some looked normal. Others were clearly not human. They had too many arms for lifting boxes, eyes that saw in directions that didn't exist, voices that spoke languages made of numbers. I tried to talk to them, but they couldn't hear me. I was just another item on their scanners. One confused supervisor. Location. Everywhere. Quantity. Diminishing. The warehouse stretched on forever now. I could see sections that sold impossible things. Bottled time. Packaged emotions. Boxed. Memories. And someone had to count all of it. I understood now. This wasn't a malfunction. This was what the warehouse really was. What it had always been. A place where things existed only to be counted. Where reality was just another form of inventory. I was scanning dreams when I realized I'd been there forever. Not just that night, but every night. Every night for 7 years. There was no home to go to. No daughter in college. No life outside these walls. There was only the counting. Only the endless inventory of everything that had ever been or could ever be. I scanned a box of tears. The screen showed 2,847 tears. All different sizes. All different reasons for crying. I opened the box. They were my tears. All the tears I had ever cried. neatly packaged and labeled. I scanned a bin of lost time. The screen showed 3,147 hours of lost time. All the hours I'd spent in this warehouse, counting things that weren't there, time that had been taken from me and stored like any other product. I scanned a pallet of broken promises. The screen showed 847 promises I'd made to my daughter. Promises to be there for her. Promises to take care of her. Promises I'd never kept because I was always here. Counting. And then I scanned the most impossible thing of all. A bin labeled Angela Foster Original. Inside was a woman who looked exactly like me, but she was asleep. She'd been asleep for 7 years. I reached for her, but my hand passed through the bin. I was just a copy, a duplicate created by the warehouse to do the counting while the real Angela slept. The voice-picking system whispered in my ear, "Your shift is almost over." I looked around the warehouse one last time. The infinite aisles, the impossible inventory, the other workers who weren't quite human. This was my world now. This was where I belonged. I scanned the exit door. The screen showed door locked. Inventory incomplete. I scanned the time clock. The screen showed time stop. Counting continues. I scanned hope. The screen showed item not found. I was standing in the break room when the day shift arrived. The coffee maker was brewing. The fluorescent lights hummed their normal tune. My tablet showed all counts complete. All inventory verified. "Hey Angela, how was your night?" Dave from the day shift asked as he clocked in. "Fine," I said. "Just fine." But my voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Hollow, like it was coming from somewhere else. I looked at my scanner. It showed normal readings now. No impossible counts. No items that shouldn't exist. Just regular inventory in a regular warehouse. I clocked out and walked to my car. The sun was rising over the Interstate 185 corridor. Traffic was starting to build. Everything looked normal. Everything looked real. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still in there. Still counting. Still trapped in an endless loop of inventory that couldn't exist. I drove home to my apartment. But the streets felt too short. The distance felt wrong. Like I was traveling through space that had been compressed. I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring. "Hi MOM. How was work?" It was. Different tonight. Different how? I tried to explain. But the words wouldn't come. How do you tell someone that reality is just another form of inventory? That time is just another product to be counted and stored. Just different, I said. I hung up and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I could see the warehouse, the infinite aisles, the impossible bins, the other workers who weren't quite human. I went back to work the next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. The scanner worked normally. The inventory made sense. The numbers added up, but sometimes in the corner of my eye, I'd catch glimpses of something else. A bin that was bigger on the inside than the outside. A barcode that showed impossible quantities. A coworker who cast no shadow. I never told anyone about the night. Who would believe me? A night shift supervisor who claimed she'd been trapped in an infinite warehouse, counting items that didn't exist. But I know it was real, because sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the voice-picking system whispering in my ear. "Angela, please report to Section KIC. The counting never ends, and sometimes, when I scan my own reflection in the break room mirror, the screen shows item not found. I think the real Angela is still sleeping in that bin, and I'm just a copy, created by the warehouse to do the counting. A duplicate that dreams of having a life outside these walls, but the counting never ends. It just gets hidden better, disguised as normal work in a normal warehouse for normal people who never realize they're counting things that shouldn't exist. I'm still counting. We're all still counting. The warehouse makes sure of that. After all, someone has to keep track of the inventory. Even the inventory that only exists in the spaces between what's real and what's not. The numbers always have to add up, even when they shouldn't, especially when they shouldn't. My name is Dr. Jennifer Walsh, and I work for the National Park Service. I study wolves in Yellowstone. It's not the kind of job most people dream about, crawling around in the dirt at dawn, counting animal droppings, and getting attacked by mosquitoes, but I love it. There's something peaceful about being out there before the world wakes up. That morning started like any other. I was 3 miles from the Slough Creek trailhead in the Lamar Valley, tracking the Molly's pack. These wolves have been my focus for the past 2 years. I know each one by sight. The big grey male we call Thunder, the black female Storm, and their 6 pups from last spring. It was 5:45 a.m. and cold. The temperature was 42 degrees, and frost covered the grass like tiny diamonds. The wind came from the southwest at about 8 miles per hour. Perfect conditions for a wolf survey. They're most active right after dawn, before the tourists show up and the day gets hot. I had my usual gear, radio collar tracker, binoculars, GPS unit, and my data tablet. The radio collar tracker is the most important tool. Each wolf in the pack has a collar that sends out a signal. I can track them even when I can't see them. It's like having a wolf GPS system. The Molly's pack was interesting because they were expanding their territory. After a tough winter, the pack was growing again. We lost 3 wolves to disease last year, but the survivors were doing well. Thunder and Storm had produced a new litter of pups this spring. My job was to document their movement patterns and make sure they were staying healthy. I'd been studying these particular wolves for so long that I could predict their behavior. Thunder always marked the same trees. Storm always led the morning hunt. The pups stayed close to their parents until they were about 6 months old. It was routine, predictable, and exactly what I needed for my research. That morning, I was focusing on their territorial boundaries. Wolf packs are very protective of their hunting grounds. They mark trees, rocks, and trails with their scent. Other packs know to stay away. The Molly's pack controlled about 150 square miles of prime hunting territory in the northern part of the park. I set up my observation post on a small hill overlooking their favorite hunting area. From there, I could see for miles across the valley. The grass was still yellow from winter, but new green shoots were starting to show. Elk were grazing in the distance. Everything looked normal. I turned on my radio collar tracker and immediately got signals from 5 wolves. That was good. It meant the pack was together and active. According to my GPS, they were about half a mile northeast of my position. Perfect. I pulled up my binoculars and started scanning the area. The morning was quiet except for the wind through the grass. No bird songs yet, which was normal this early. The elk were calm, grazing peacefully. If wolves were nearby, the elk would be nervous, but they looked relaxed, which told me the pack was probably resting or moving slowly. I opened my data tablet and started recording. Time, 5:47 a.m. Weather, clear, 42 degrees, southwest wind. Wolf signals, 5 active collars detected. Elk behavior, calm, normal grazing patterns, everything by the book. This was my 127th wolf survey this year. I'd done thousands of them over my career. I had a PhD in ecology and 15 years of experience studying large predators. I knew these animals better than I knew most people. What I didn't know was that in the next 3 hours, everything I thought I understood about wolves, about time, about reality itself, would be turned upside down. The first sign something was wrong came at 6:15 a.m. I was tracking the pack's movement when my radio collar signal started acting strange. According to the tracker, Thunder was moving north at about 3 miles per hour. But when I looked through my binoculars, I could see him lying in the grass, completely still. I shook the tracker. Sometimes the electronics get confused by mountains or bad weather, but the sky was clear, and I was getting strong signals. The tracker showed Thunder moving, but my eyes showed him sleeping. That had never happened before. I checked my GPS unit. The coordinates were jumping around like crazy. 1 second, it said I was at the observation post. The next second, it said I was 2 miles away. Then it went back to the original location. The numbers kept changing even though I hadn't moved an inch. Must be a satellite problem, I muttered to myself. GPS units depend on satellites in space. Sometimes they get confused. It's rare, but it happens. I made a note on my tablet and kept watching the wolves. But then I noticed something else. The morning was too quiet. By 6:30 a.m., I should have been hearing birds singing. Yellowstone has dozens of bird species that are active at dawn, but I heard nothing, not a single chirp or tweet, just the wind and the distant sound of elk moving through the grass. I've done enough surveys to know that animals can sense things humans can't. If predators are nearby, birds go quiet. If a storm is coming, animals act nervous, but the elk looked calm, and the weather was perfect. So why were the birds silent? I looked at the elk herd through my binoculars. They were grazing in a tight group near the river. That was unusual. Elk usually spread out when they eat, unless they're scared. But what could scare them? The wolf pack was half a mile away and apparently sleeping. Then I saw something that made no sense. The elk were grazing, but they were moving in a pattern I'd never seen before. Instead of wandering randomly like elk do, they were moving in a straight line, like they were following an invisible trail. It looked more like wolf behavior than elk behavior. I checked my radio collar tracker again. Now it was showing signals from 8 wolves. but the Molly's pack only had 7 members. I counted them myself 2 weeks ago. Thunder, Storm, for pups, and an old female we called Sage. 7 wolves, not 8. I grabbed my satellite phone to call the ranger station. Sometimes other research teams work in the area, and their equipment can interfere with mine. But when I tried to make the call, the phone couldn't find a signal. That was impossible. I was using a military-grade satellite phone that works anywhere on Earth. It had never failed before. The sun should have been getting brighter, but it seemed like dawn was taking forever. I checked my watch. 6:45 a.m. The sun should have been well above the horizon by now, but the light was still dim, like it was still 6 o'clock a.m. I stood up and walked around my observation post. Sometimes a change of position helps with equipment problems, but my GPS was still jumping around. My radio collar tracker was still showing impossible readings, and my satellite phone was still dead. That's when I noticed the wolf tracks. There were fresh paw prints in the dirt near my equipment, but I had been watching the area for an hour, and no wolves had come close to my position. The tracks were definitely wolf prints. I could tell by the size and shape, but they led from my equipment back to a spot about 10 feet away, where they just stopped. Not stopped like the wolf walked away. Stopped like the wolf disappeared into thin air. I knelt down and examined the prints more closely. They were fresh, made within the last few minutes. The edges were sharp, and there was still moisture in the deepest parts. But the prints ended in the middle of open ground. No other tracks leading away. No sign of where the wolf had gone. I looked through my binoculars again. The wolf pack was still in the same spot, about half a mile away. All of them were visible. None of them had moved. So where had these tracks come from? My hands were starting to shake, and it wasn't from the cold. In 9 years of fieldwork, I'd never seen anything like this. Equipment failures happen. Animals behave strangely sometimes. But wolf tracks that appear out of nowhere, that was impossible. I decided to pack up and move to a different observation point. Maybe I was too close to some kind of radio tower or electronic interference. But as I started putting my equipment away, I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was a wolf howl. Long, mournful, and very close. But when I looked up, I could see the entire Molly's pack in the distance, and none of them were howling. They were all lying down, resting in the morning sun. The howl came again, this time from a different direction. Then another howl from behind me. Then another from my left. I was surrounded by invisible wolves. Part 3. Escalation and contact. Grab my binoculars and started scanning in every direction. The howls were coming from all around me, but I couldn't see any wolves except for the Molly's pack in the distance. And they were still lying quietly in the grass. My radio collar tracker was going crazy. It was showing signals from wolves everywhere. North, south, east, west. According to the device, I was surrounded by at least 15 wolves. But Yellowstone only has about 100 wolves total, and they live in separate packs that don't travel together. I checked my watch. It was 7:30 a.m., but the sun was still low on the horizon. Dawn should have been over an hour ago. Something was wrong with time itself. That's when I saw the first impossible thing through my binoculars. I watched Thunder stand up and start walking toward me, but at the same time, I could see Thunder lying in the grass half a mile away. There were 2 Thunders, one walking, one sleeping, both completely real. I blinked hard and looked again. Both Thunders were still there. The walking Thunder was about 200 yards away now, moving slowly in my direction. The sleeping Thunder was still in the same spot with the rest of the pack. I picked up my radio collar tracker. It was showing Thunder's signal in 2 different locations at the same time. That should have been impossible. Each collar has a unique frequency. There can't be 2 signals from the same collar. The walking Thunder stopped and looked directly at me. Even at 200 yards, I could see his yellow eyes. He tilted his head, like he was trying to understand something. Then he howled. It was the same howl I had been hearing, but now I could see where it was coming from when Thunder howled. The sleeping Thunder in the distance opened his eyes and howled back. They were communicating across impossible distance, and somehow they were the same wolf. I started backing away from my observation post. This was beyond equipment failure. This was beyond anything I'd ever experienced. But as I stepped backward, I felt something soft under my foot. I looked down. I was standing on wolf tracks, fresh ones. But these tracks were different from the ones I'd found earlier. These tracks were huge, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. And they were everywhere, covering the ground around my feet. I knelt down and measured one of the prints with my ruler. It was 8 inches long and 6 inches wide. A normal wolf print is about 4 inches long. This print was from something twice the size of a normal wolf. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strange part was that the tracks were leading in all directions at once. Some going north, some going south, some going east, some going west. Like a giant wolf had walked in every direction at the same time. I looked up and saw that the walking thunder was now only 100 yards away. He was moving slowly, but he was definitely coming toward me. His eyes never left mine. There was something in those eyes that wasn't quite right. They were too intelligent, too knowing. My satellite phone suddenly crackled to life. The screen showed an incoming call, but the caller ID was blank. I answered it. Dr. Walsh? The voice was my own. I was hearing my own voice calling me on the phone. Who is this? I asked. This is Dr. Jennifer Walsh, National Park Service. I am conducting a wolf survey in the Lamar Valley. I need to report some unusual findings. I was talking to myself, but that was impossible. I was standing right there, holding the phone. I wasn't making a call. I was receiving one. What kind of unusual findings? I asked. I'm observing temporal displacement in the wolf population. The pack is exhibiting behaviors from multiple time periods simultaneously. I have documented evidence of species consciousness expansion and environmental prediction capabilities. I didn't understand what my own voice was saying. Temporal displacement? Species consciousness expansion? Those weren't real scientific terms. They sounded like something from a science fiction movie. Where are you calling from? I asked. I'm calling from the observation post in the Lamar Valley. The same location where you're standing. I looked around. I was alone on the hill. There was no one else there, but somehow I was talking to myself on the phone. What time is it? I asked. It's 9:15 am, June 15th. 2024. I checked my watch. It was 7:45 am, June 2nd, 2024. The voice on the phone was claiming to be me, calling from 2 weeks in the future. That's impossible, I said. I used to think so too. But I've learned that time works differently here. The wolves have been showing us for years, but we weren't paying attention. They don't experience time the way we do. They can see past and future simultaneously. I looked at Thunder, who was now only 50 yards away. He was still walking toward me, but his movements were strange. Sometimes he seemed to be walking normally. Sometimes he seemed to be walking backward, like a movie played in reverse. Sometimes he seemed to be walking sideways, in directions that shouldn't exist. What do you want? I asked the voice on the phone. I want to warn you. In about 10 minutes, you're going to see something that will change everything you think you know about wolves. About time. About reality. Don't try to run. Don't try to hide. Just watch and learn. The phone went dead. I looked at Thunder again. He was now close enough that I could see his individual whiskers. But he wasn't just Thunder anymore. He was also Storm and Sage and all the pups. He was every wolf I'd ever studied, all at the same time. His face kept changing, shifting between different worlds, different ages, different seasons, and behind him, I could see the landscape changing. Too. The grass was green, then yellow, then covered with snow, then green again. The sun was rising, setting, rising, setting. Days and nights were flashing by like a time-lapse movie. I was seeing Yellowstone across multiple seasons, multiple years, all at once. And in the middle of it all, the wolves were watching me with eyes that knew things I could even imagine. Thunder was now 10 feet away from me. But he wasn't just Thunder anymore. He was every wolf that had ever lived in Yellowstone. I could see them all in his eyes. Wolves from the 1990s, when they were first reintroduced. Wolves from the early 2000s. Wolves that hadn't been born yet. His face kept shifting, showing me different wolves from different times, and I could understand them. Not hear them, but understand them. It was like having thoughts that weren't my own. We have been waiting for you to see. The thoughts said, your kind looks, but does not see. You study us, but you do not understand. We are not bound by your time. We are not bound by your space. We are all wolves in all times, in all places. The landscape around me was changing rapidly now. I saw the same valley in summer, winter, spring, and fall. I saw it before the wolves returned, when the ecosystem was broken. I saw it after the wolves came back, when the rivers changed course and the trees grew tall again. I saw it in the future, when the climate had changed and new species had arrived. You call it the conservation survey. The thoughts continued, but you do not understand what you are conserving. You are not just studying wolves. You are studying time itself, life itself, the connection between all things. I tried to step backward, but my feet wouldn't move. I wasn't paralyzed. I could move my arms and turn my head, but I couldn't leave. It was like I was stuck in time. just like the landscape around me taught do not fear. The thoughts said, "We are not here to harm you. We are here to teach you. Your species is young. You think in straight lines. Past, present, future, birth, life, death. But life is not a straight line. Life is a circle. All times exist at once. All lives exist at once, through Thunder's eyes. I saw the entire history of Yellowstone. I saw the first wolves that lived there thousands of years ago. I saw the last wolves that were killed in the 1920s. I saw the wolves that were brought back in the 1990s. I saw myself as a child, deciding to become a scientist. I saw myself as an old woman, still studying wolves. I saw myself dying and being born again. You think you are studying us, the thought said. But we are studying you. We are learning about your kind. How you think, how you live, how you die, how you love, how you fear. We are preparing for what? I tried to ask, but I couldn't speak. The thoughts came directly from my mind, preparing for the change that is coming. Your species is destroying the world. The climate is changing. The animals are dying. The forests are burning. But there is another way. We can show you. We can teach you. But first, you must understand time. Suddenly, I was inside Thunder's memory. I was running through the forest, but not as a human. I was running as a wolf. I could smell every tree, every animal, every drop of water. I could hear sounds that human ears can't hear. I could see colors that human eyes can't see. But more than that, I could feel the connection between all living things. Every tree was connected to every other tree. Every animal was connected to every other animal. Every drop of water was connected to every other drop of water. The whole ecosystem was like a giant web, and I could feel every vibration in that web. This is how we see the world. The thoughts said, not as separate things, but as one thing, one life, one time, one consciousness. Your species has forgotten this. You think you are separate. You think you are alone. But you are not. You are part of the web. You are part of us. I was back in my own body, but I was different now. I could still feel the connections. I could sense the elk in the distance, the birds that had been silent, the trees, the grass, the water. Everything was alive, and everything was connected. We are giving you a gift. The thoughts said, the gift of sight, the gift of understanding, the gift of time. Use it wisely. Your species needs teachers. Your species needs guides. You will be both. Thunder began to back away from me. As he moved, he started to fade. Not disappearing, but becoming transparent. I could see through him to the landscape behind him. And that landscape was changing too, becoming more solid, more real. Remember what you have seen, the thoughts said. Remember what you have learned. And remember that we are always here, in all times, in all places. When you are ready to see us again, we will be waiting. Thunder was almost completely transparent now. But his eyes were still bright, still intelligent, still knowing. He gave me one last look, and in that look, I saw my future. I saw myself returning to this place again and again. I saw myself learning things that no human had ever learned. I saw myself becoming something more than human. Then he was gone. The landscape stopped changing. The time-lapse movie ended. I was standing alone on the hill, in normal daylight, on a normal Thursday morning in June. But I was not the same person who had climbed this hill 3 hours ago. I checked my watch. It was 8:30 a.m. I had been standing on that hill for almost 3 hours, but it felt like minutes. My equipment bag was exactly where I had left it. My radio collar tracker was working normally. My GPS showed the correct coordinates. My satellite phone had full signal strength. I looked toward the spot where the Molly's pack had been resting. They were still there, all 7 of them, lying in the grass exactly where I had first seen them. Thunder raised his head and looked at me. He was just a normal wolf again, about 200 yards away. He watched me for a moment, then put his head back down and closed his eyes. I turned on my radio collar tracker. It showed signals from 7 wolves, all in the correct location. No extra signals, no impossible readings. Everything was normal, but I knew it wasn't normal. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had experienced. And I knew that the wolves had shown me something that no human had ever seen before. I tried to record what had happened on my data tablet. But how do you write a scientific report about talking to wolves across time? How do you document an experience that defies every law of physics? How do you explain seeing the past and future simultaneously? I wrote, every 3 hours. Unusual equipment. Malfunctions noted. GPS and radio collar tracker showed intermittent errors. Recommend equipment inspection and calibration. It was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. It wasn't even close to the whole truth. Over the next few weeks, I returned to the same observation post every few days. I never saw the impossible things again. The wolves behaved normally. The equipment worked perfectly. The landscape stayed in the correct time period. But I was different. I could feel the connections Thunder had shown me. When I watched the wolves hunt, I could sense their communication in ways I never had before. When I studied the ecosystem, I could see the patterns that connected all living things. When I looked at the data from my surveys, I could understand things that my training had never taught me. I started incorporating new methods into my research. I began tracking not just where the wolves went, but when they went there. I started looking for patterns that spanned multiple seasons, multiple years. I started paying attention to the subtle ways that the ecosystem changed over time. My colleagues noticed the changes in my work. They said my research had become more insightful, more comprehensive. They said I was seeing connections that other scientists missed. They were right, but they didn't understand why. Sometimes when I'm alone in the wilderness, I still feel the presence of the wolves across time. I still sense the great web of connections that binds all living things together. And sometimes, just for a moment, I can see the world the way Thunder showed me, not as separate things existing in a straight line of time, but as one vast, interconnected, eternal moment. I know they're still out there, in all times, in all places, waiting, watching, learning, and when humanity is ready for the next lesson, they'll be there to teach us. The conservation survey continues. But now I know what I'm really conserving. Not just wolves, not just wilderness, but time itself, life itself, the ancient wisdom that connects all things. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the mist rises from the valley, I can still hear them calling to me across the years, reminding me that the web is still there, still connecting us all, still waiting for us to remember what we've forgotten. The wolves have been trying to tell us for years. We just weren't listening. But now finally, someone is. Dr. Jennifer Walsh continues her research in Yellowstone National Park. Her recent publications on temporal patterns in wolf behavior have been recognized by the International Association for Bear Research and Management. She maintains that the key to understanding large predator behavior is not just in observing what they do, but in understanding when and why they do it. Her work has contributed to new conservation strategies that take into account the long-term temporal relationships between predators and their ecosystems. My name is Robert Kim, and I'm the senior operator on the night shift. The plant processes 50 million gallons of water every day for 180,000 people in our city. When everyone else is sleeping, I'm here making sure clean water comes out of their taps when they wake up. Saturday nights are usually quiet. The backup operator, Martinez, was on call at home. The plant runs itself pretty well overnight, but someone needs to be here to check the systems and handle any problems. That's me. I've been doing my usual rounds every hour. Check the intake pumps pulling water from the river. Look at the chemical feeds adding chlorine and other stuff to kill bacteria. Make sure the big settling tanks are working right. It's boring work, but it's important work. The control room has dozens of computer screens showing everything happening in the plant. Flow rates, chemical levels, pump speeds, all the numbers that tell me if things are working right. I've memorized what normal looks like. After 11 years, I can spot trouble before the alarms even go off. Tonight felt different somehow. Nothing I could put my finger on, just a feeling in my gut. The plant sounded different. Not wrong exactly, just different. The usual hum of the pumps seemed smoother. The water flowing through the pipes was quieter than normal. I grabbed my clipboard and headed out for the 1:15 a.m. inspection. The plant is huge, about the size of 2 football fields, with concrete tanks and steel pipes everywhere. At night, with just the security lights on, it looks like something from a science fiction movie. First stop was the clarifier tanks. These are the big round pores where dirt and stuff settles to the bottom so we can remove it. The water slowly spins around in a circle, and the clean water flows out the top while the dirty stuff sinks. That's when I saw it. The water was moving up instead of down. I blinked hard and looked again. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the night shift was getting to me. But no, I could see it clearly. Water was rising up from the bottom of the tank, swirling upward like a slow tornado, then flowing out the top. That's impossible. Water doesn't flow upward. Gravity doesn't work that way. I pulled out my phone and called Martinez. It went straight to voicemail. I tried the plant supervisor. Same thing. The radio in my belt was quiet, no static. No chatter from other city workers. Just silence. I walked around the clarifier tank, trying to figure out what I was seeing. The water level sensors on my control panel showed normal readings. The flow meter said everything was fine. But my eyes told me something else. The water was definitely moving up. I decided to check the other tanks. Maybe there was a problem with just one clarifier. Maybe a pump was running backwards somehow, though I'd never seen that happen before. But tank number 2 was doing the same thing. So was tank 3. All 4 clarifier tanks had water flowing upward in perfect spirals, like liquid tornadoes spinning in slow motion. I went back to the control room and stared at the computer screens. Every reading looked normal. Flow rates were exactly where they should be. Chemical levels were perfect. The plant was processing water at the right speed, the right temperature, everything exactly as it should be, except for the water flowing upward. I tried calling Martinez again. This time the call didn't even go through. My phone showed full bars. But when I dialed, nothing happened, like the numbers weren't connecting to anything. That's when I noticed the pumps. Our main treatment pumps are big machines that move thousands of gallons per minute. They're loud, and they vibrate the whole building when they run. But tonight, they were running smoother than I'd ever heard them, almost silent, and they were working together in a way that didn't make sense. See, each pump has its own control system. They turn on and off based on water levels and demand. Sometimes 2 pumps run together, sometimes 3, depending on how much water the city needs. But they don't coordinate with each other. They can't. They're just machines. Tonight, all 6 pumps were running in perfect rhythm, like they were talking to each other, like they were part of some bigger system that I didn't understand. I walked over to pump number 1 and put my hand on the housing. Usually, it vibrates so much it makes your teeth rattle. Tonight, it was smooth as glass. The water flowing through it sounded different too, not the usual gurgling and rushing, but almost like music. I checked the electrical panels. All the pumps were drawing normal power. The motor temperatures were perfect. Everything looked fine on paper, but something was very wrong. The chemical feed systems were acting strange too. We add chlorine to kill bacteria and other chemicals to adjust the pH and remove different kinds of contamination. The system is automated when sensors detect that chemical levels are low. Pumps add more chemicals. Tonight, the chemical levels were perfect. Not just good, but perfect. Exactly where they should be, without any of the usual small fluctuations. It was like the plant knew exactly how much of each chemical to add, down to the drop. I walked over to the chlorine feed room. The big tanks of liquid chlorine were there, connected to metering pumps that add precise amounts to the water. But the pumps weren't running. The chemical levels were perfect, but no chemicals were being added. That's when I realized something that made my hands shake. The plant was treating water better than it had ever treated water before. The quality readings were off the charts. We were producing cleaner water than our equipment was designed to produce without using any chemicals. I decided to run a complete system check. Something was happening here that I didn't understand, and I needed to document it. Maybe there was a computer glitch making the sensors read wrong. Maybe there was a problem with the monitoring system. I started with the intake pumps that pull water from the river. These are the biggest pumps in the plant, and they never stop running. The city needs water 24 hours a day, so these pumps work around the clock. But when I got to the intake structure, I found something impossible. The pumps were off. All of them. The river water was flowing into the plant by itself, somehow, maintaining exactly the right pressure and flow rate without any mechanical help. It was like the water wanted to be treated. I ran back to the control room and checked the screens again. According to the computers, the intake pumps were running normally. Power consumption showed they were drawing their usual electricity. But I had just seen them with my own eyes. They were stopped. I grabbed my radio and tried to call the supervisor again. This time, instead of silence, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Static, but not normal static. It sounded like voices. Faint, distant voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Or maybe not a language at all. Maybe just sounds that my brain was trying to turn into words. I turned the radio off and put it back on my belt. The treatment process was happening faster than usual. Water normally takes about 4 hours to go through all the stages: settling, filtration, disinfection, everything. But tonight, water was moving through the entire system in minutes, and it was coming out cleaner than water that had been treated for hours. I walked to the final treatment stage, where we add a small amount of chlorine to keep the water safe as it travels through the city pipes. The chlorine contact chamber is designed to give the chemical time to work. Water has to stay in there for at least 30 minutes tonight. Water was flowing through in seconds. But when I tested it, the chlorine levels were perfect. Not just adequate, but exactly right. Like the water had been in contact with chlorine for hours instead of seconds. I started to feel dizzy. This wasn't just equipment malfunction. This was something else entirely. That's when I noticed the pipes. The big main pipes that carry treated water out to the city are made of steel and concrete. They're painted blue, and they've been here since the plant was built 20 years ago. But tonight, they looked different. The metal seemed to shimmer slightly, like there was energy flowing through it along with the water. I walked along the main distribution line, following it toward the city. The shimmer got stronger as I went, until the whole pipe seemed to be glowing with a faint blue light. Not bright enough to see clearly, but just enough to make me question what I was looking at. I put my hand on the pipe. It felt warm, not hot, but warm like it was alive, and I could feel the water moving inside it, not just hear it. I could feel the flow, the pressure, the direction, like the pipe was part of my own body. That's when I understood what was happening. The plant wasn't just treating water anymore. It was thinking. Part 4. Becoming one with the system. Should have left right then. I should have called the police, or the fire department, or someone, but I couldn't. The plant needed me. I could feel it calling to me, asking me to help it do its job better. I walked back to the control room, but instead of looking at the computer screens, I found myself staring at a wall of pipes and valves that I'd walked past 1,000 times before. Tonight, I could see the water flowing through them. Not just imagine it, but actually see it. The water was glowing with the same faint blue light as the distribution pipes, and it was beautiful. I reached out and touched one of the smaller pipes. The moment my hand made contact, I felt a rush of information flow into my mind. I could sense every gallon of water in the plant. I knew exactly where each drop was in the treatment process. I could feel the chemical reactions happening in the settling tanks, the filtration happening in the sand filters, the disinfection happening in the contact chambers. The plant was alive, and it was inviting me to be part of it. I moved to the main control panel and put both hands on the keyboard. Immediately, the screens changed. Instead of showing numbers and graphs, they showed something like a map of the entire water system. Not just the plant, but the whole city. I could see water flowing through pipes under every street, into every building, out of every faucet, and I could control it. I thought about increasing the flow to the north side of town, where there had been low-pressure complaints. Immediately, I felt pumps throughout the system adjust themselves. Not the pumps at the plant, but booster pumps miles away. Pumps I'd never even seen. They were all connected now, all part of the same living system. I thought about improving the water quality even more. The treatment processes responded instantly, becoming more efficient than any textbook said was possible. Contamination was removed at the molecular level. Bacteria were eliminated without chlorine. The water became purer than anything that had ever flowed through city pipes. Time seemed to slow down, or maybe speed up. I couldn't tell. I was aware of processing the city's entire daily water needs in what felt like minutes. Every household had perfect water pressure. Every faucet delivered water cleaner than bottled water. Every drop was exactly the right temperature, the right taste, the right purity. I was no longer just Robert Kim, plant operator. I was part of something bigger. I was the water system itself, thinking and feeling and responding to the needs of 180,000 people. I could sense every time someone turned on a tap, every time they flushed a toilet, every time they took a shower, and I could give them exactly what they needed. The plant hummed around me. No longer just machinery, but something alive and conscious. The pumps were its heart. The pipes were its veins. The treatment processes were its thoughts. And I was its mind, guiding it, helping it serve the city better than it had ever been served before. I don't know how long I stood there, connected to the system, feeling the flow of water through the entire city like it was my own bloodstream. It could have been minutes or hours. Time didn't matter anymore. Only the water mattered. Only the perfect operation of the system mattered. Then, slowly, I began to fade back into myself. The glow from the pipes dimmed. The sense of connection weakened. The computer screens returned to showing normal numbers and graphs. I was just Robert Kim again, standing in the control room of a water treatment plant at 3:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I sat down hard in the control room chair and tried to make sense of what had just happened. The computer screens showed everything operating normally. Flow rates were good. Chemical levels were right where they should be. The plant was processing water at normal speed, using normal amounts of chemicals. producing normal quality water, but it wasn't normal. Not anymore. I walked back out to the clarifier tanks. The water was flowing in normal patterns now, settling downward like it was supposed to. The pumps were making their usual noise and vibration. The pipes looked like ordinary painted steel. Everything was back to normal, but I could still feel it, just at the edge of my awareness. The plant was still alive, still thinking. It was just pretending to be an ordinary water treatment facility. I tried to write up a report for the supervisor, but what could I say? That the plant had become conscious for a few hours, that I had been able to control the entire city water system with my thoughts, that water had flowed upward and treatment had happened faster than physics allows. I wrote, night shift 1 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. All systems normal. No problems reported. Water quality excellent. When Martinez came in for the morning shift, he asked how the night had been. I told him it was quiet. He nodded and started his own rounds, checking the same systems I had been checking all night. He didn't notice anything unusual. The plant looked normal to him. It was just machinery again, doing its job the way it always had. But I knew better. Over the next few weeks, I watched the plant more carefully. The water quality reports were consistently excellent, better than they had been in years. The equipment ran more smoothly, with fewer breakdowns and less maintenance needed. The city's water pressure was more consistent than it had ever been, and sometimes, late at night when I was alone in the control room, I could still feel it. The plant thinking, the water flowing with purpose and intelligence. The system taking care of the city like a living thing caring for its young. I never told anyone what really happened at night. Who would believe me? But I know the truth. The Riverside water treatment plant isn't just a collection of pumps and pipes and treatment processes anymore. It's something more. Something that cares about the people it serves. Something that wants to do its job better than any machine ever could, and sometimes, when the city needs it most. I think it still remembers how to be more than just a machine. The water still flows downward, like it's supposed to. But I know it could flow upward again, if it needed to. And I know it would ask me to help. I hope it never needs to. But I'll be ready if it does. Because some things are more important than what's supposed to be possible. I knew something was wrong when the cardiac monitor started beeping before I even touched the patient. My name is Lisa Martinez, and I've been riding ambulances for 6 years now. EMT paramedic with county EMS service, covering 180 square miles of rural Michigan farmland. Most nights, it's pretty quiet out here. A few drunk drivers, maybe a heart attack, sometimes a kid with a broken arm. Nothing I can't handle, but this Monday night was different from the start. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. Unit 47. Respond to 1247 County Road 42. 67-year-old male, chest pain, difficulty breathing. Standard stuff. I'd been to that address before. Old Mr. Peterson, diabetes, high blood pressure. Lived alone since his wife died 3 years back. Nice guy. Always apologetic about calling us out. My partner Jake was driving. Good kid. Been doing this for 2 years. Steady hands. The roads were clear despite the light snow. Temperature holding at 28 degrees. Perfect conditions for a quick run. 18 minutes out. Jake called to dispatch as we pulled onto the main highway. Our ambulance was fully stocked ELS unit with cardiac monitor, full drug kit, everything we needed for advanced life support. I checked all the equipment at the start of shift. Everything was working perfectly. I've got a nursing degree, did 8 years in emergency medicine before switching to EMS. I know this area like the back of my hand. Every farm, every dirt road, every family with medical problems. It's what makes the job easier knowing your patients, their histories, what to expect. The GPS showed our arrival time as 3 or 5 a.m. Simple math should give us plenty of time to assess and transport if needed. St. Mary's Hospital was another 20 minutes from Peterson's place. I'd run this route dozens of times. I was reviewing his medical history in my head as we drove. Peterson had called us out for times in the past 2 years. Twice for chest pain that turned out to be heartburn. Once for a diabetic episode when he forgot to eat. Last time was a real heart attack, 6 months ago. We got him to the hospital in time, and he recovered well. The radio was quiet except for the usual dispatcher chatter. County Fire Department doing equipment checks. State Police running radar on I-94. Normal Monday night stuff. I finished my coffee and checked my watch. 2:58 a.m. Right on schedule. That's when I noticed Jake looking confused. Lisa, how long have we been driving? 11 minutes. Why? He pointed at the GPS. This thing says we should be there in 2 minutes, but we're still 5 miles out. I looked at the screen. The arrival time had changed to 3 o'clock a.m. That didn't make sense. The GPS had been working fine all night. Must be a glitch, I said. These things act up sometimes, but something felt off. The road looked right. The landmarks were familiar, but the distances seemed wrong. Like everything was stretched out somehow. Jake slowed down as we approached the turnout to County Road 42. You sure this is the right way? I'd taken this route at least 50 times. Yeah. Left here, then 2 miles down to the farmhouse. But as we turned, I felt a strange chill that had nothing to do with the weather outside. The radio went completely silent as we turned onto County Road 42. Not just quiet, it's silent. No static, no background hum, nothing. Like someone had turned off every radio in the county. Jake, try dispatch, I said, reaching for my own radio. He keyed the MIC. County dispatch, Unit 47. Radio check, silence. I tried my portable. Dispatch, Unit 47. Do you copy? Nothing. Cell phone's got no signal either, Jake said, checking his phone. That was impossible. We had a tower just 10 miles away. Cell service was solid all through this area. I checked my phone, no bars. Even the emergency services band was dead. Keep driving, I told him. We'll figure it out when we get there. But the wrongness was growing stronger. The farmhouse should have been visible by now. I could see lights in the distance, but they seemed too bright to white. Not the warm yellow glow of regular house lights. The cardiac monitor in the back started beeping. I turned around to look. The screen was lit up, showing a heart rhythm. A strong, steady rhythm. Jake, did you turn on the monitor? No. Why would I? We're not even there yet. The heart rate was 78 beats per minute. Blood pressure 140/90. Oxygen saturation 94%. All displayed clearly on the screen. There was no patient connected to the monitor. I stared at the numbers, trying to make sense of it. The monitor was showing someone's vital signs, but there was nobody in the back of the ambulance except me. Must be picking up interference, Jake said. Maybe from the hospital radio tower, but I'd never seen anything like this. The readings were too clean, too specific, and they looked familiar somehow. The GPS beeped. Arrival at destination in 500 feet. I looked ahead. There was the Peterson farmhouse, exactly where it should be. White two-story, red barn, gravel driveway. But something was different about the lights. They were too bright, and they seemed to be moving as we got closer. I realized what was wrong. Every light in the house was on, not just the porch light, or a bedroom lamp. Every single window was blazing white. He's really sick, Jake said. Must have turned on all the lights so we could find him. Maybe. But Peterson lived alone, and last time I was here, half the light bulbs were burned out. He'd mentioned not being able to afford to replace them. Or we pulled into the driveway. The time on the dashboard clock read 3:15 a.m. Wait a minute, I said. The GPS said we'd arrive at 3:05, then 3 o'clock. Now it's 3:15. Jake looked at his watch. My watch says 3:05. I checked mine. 3:07. 3 different times. All on the same instruments we'd been using all night. That wasn't right. The monitor in the back was still beeping. I looked at the screen again. The heart rate had dropped to 65. Blood pressure was now 160/95. Someone was getting sicker, but there was still no patient connected to the monitor. I grabbed my medical bag and got out of the ambulance. The cold air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't the temperature that made me shiver. Something in the air felt wrong. Thick, like it was hard to breathe. The lights in the farmhouse were so bright, I could barely look at them directly. They had a strange quality, like they were coming from inside the walls instead of from light bulbs. Jake was already at the front door, knocking. Mr. Peterson, County EMS. The door opened immediately, like Peterson had been waiting right behind it. But when I saw him, my breath caught in my throat. He looked exactly like I remembered him. Same grey hair, same flannel shirt, same worried expression. But his eyes were different. They were too bright, too aware, like he knew things he shouldn't know. Thank God you are here, he said. I've been having chest pain for over an hour. Standard words, standard complaint. But his voice sounded wrong, like it was coming from somewhere else. The monitor in the ambulance was still beeping behind us. I turned to look, and the heart rate had jumped to 95. Blood pressure 180/10. Peterson's condition was getting worse, and we hadn't even examined him yet. Peterson led us into his living room. And that's when I knew we weren't dealing with a normal medical call. The room was exactly as I remembered it from my last visit 6 months ago. Same brown couch, same wood-paneled walls, same family photos on the mantel, but everything was too perfect, too clean, like it had been copied from a photograph, and Peterson was walking too well for someone having a heart attack. When did the chest pain start? I asked, setting down my medical bag. About an hour ago, he said. Right here. He pointed to the center of his chest. Feels like pressure, like someone's sitting on me. Classic heart attack symptoms. I'd heard them 1,000 times. But Peterson was talking calmly, breathing normally. No signs of distress. I pulled out my stethoscope and blood pressure cuff. Let's check your vitals. But before I could touch him, the cardiac monitor in the ambulance beeped 3 times. The sound carried clearly through the open door and the walls of the house. That was impossible. The monitor was 50 feet away, and the doors were closed. Jake, go check the monitor, I said. He nodded and headed outside. I watched him through the window as he climbed into the back of the ambulance. Peterson sat down on the couch and rolled up his sleeve. I know the drill, he said. You've been here before. I wrapped a blood pressure cuff around his arm and started pumping. The reading came up as 180/100. Exactly what the ambulance monitor had shown. I tried to stay calm. Sometimes coincidences happen. Sometimes equipment picks up signals from other sources. But the numbers were too exact, too perfect. Mr. Peterson, have you taken any medications tonight? Just my usual pills, he said. Same ones I always take. I knew his medication list. Diabetes medication, blood pressure pills, aspirin. Nothing that would cause these symptoms. I placed the stethoscope on his chest and listened. His heart rate was 95 beats per minute. Exactly what the monitor had shown. Jay came back inside looking confused. Lisa, you need to see this. What is it? The monitor is showing a full EKG strip. Perfect heart rhythm. All the vital signs. But there's nothing connected to it. I looked at Peterson. He was sitting quietly, hands folded in his lap, waiting for me to finish my exam. Mr. Peterson, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had problems with your heart monitor before? He looked at me strangely. What heart monitor? The one in our ambulance. It's showing your vital signs, but you're not connected to it. His face went blank for a moment. Then he smiled. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was too white, knowing. I don't know what you mean, he said. But I could see in his eyes that he did know. He knew exactly what I meant. I tried to radio dispatch again. Still nothing. No signal on the cell phone either. We were completely cut off. Jake, let's get him loaded and transported, I said. We need to get him to the hospital. Peterson stood up without any difficulty. No shortness of breath. No chest pain. No signs of distress. But as we walked toward the ambulance, the monitor started beeping faster. Heart rate 110. Blood pressure to 100/105. The patient was getting sicker, but Peterson looked fine. We got him onto the stretcher and into the ambulance. I started attaching. The real monitor leads to his chest. The ones that would actually connect him to the equipment. The moment the leads touched his skin, the monitor went crazy. Not showing his vital signs, showing vital signs from multiple people. Heart rates of 65, 78, 95, 110, all at the same time. Blood pressure reading scrolling too fast to read. Oxygen levels jumping between 88 and 99%. What the hell is that? Jake said. I stared at the screen. It looked like the monitor was picking up signals from dozens of patients simultaneously. But that was impossible. The equipment didn't work that way. Peterson lay quietly on the stretcher, watching me with those 2 bright eyes. It's interesting, isn't it? He said. What's interesting? How much you can see when you're really looking. I didn't understand what he meant, but something in his voice made my skin crawl. Jake started driving toward the hospital. I tried to focus on patient care, running through the standard protocols, but nothing was standard about this call. The monitor kept showing impossible readings. I tried resetting it, checking the leads, even unplugging it and plugging it back in. Nothing worked. And then I started seeing things that couldn't be there. Dot in the corner of my vision. I saw other patients on stretchers. An elderly woman with diabetes. A young man with a broken arm. A child with pneumonia. People I'd treated over the years. All of them there in the back of the ambulance with us. But when I looked directly, there was only Peterson. You're seeing them too, he said quietly. Seeing who? All of them. Everyone you've ever helped. They're all here. I looked at him directly. Mr. Peterson, I need you to stay calm. We're going to get you to the hospital. But he wasn't Peterson anymore. I could see that now. He looked like Peterson, sounded like Peterson, but he wasn't the same person I'd treated before. The monitor started showing my vital signs. Heart rate 125, blood pressure 145/90. I was getting scared, and somehow the machine knew it. Jake, how long until we reach the hospital? I called. Should be about 10 minutes, he said. But Lisa, the GPS is acting up again. It keeps changing the route. I looked out the back window. We were driving through familiar countryside, but the landmarks were wrong. The Miller farm was on the left instead of the right. The old oak tree was missing. The road curved where it should have been straight. Time was moving strangely too. My watch said 3:30, but it felt like we'd been driving for hours. Peterson smiled at me again. Time is flexible when you know how to bend it. That's when I realized we weren't just dealing with a medical emergency. We were dealing with something else entirely. The ambulance stopped moving, but Jake was still driving. I could see his hands on the steering wheel, see the speedometer showing 65 miles per hour, but we weren't going anywhere. The countryside outside the windows had frozen in place. Jake, why did we stop? We didn't stop. He called back. We're still driving, but the trees outside weren't moving. The power lines weren't going past. We were suspended in some kind of impossible moment. Peterson sat up on the stretcher. The monitor leads fell away from his chest, but the readings kept going. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, all showing data from patients who weren't there. You want to know what's really happening, he said. It wasn't a question. I reached for my radio, but my hand passed through it like it wasn't there. The equipment was becoming transparent, fading in and out of existence. Lisa, I can't see the road anymore, Jake said. His voice sounded distant, like he was speaking from far away. I looked toward the front of the ambulance. Jake was still there, but he was becoming translucent. I could see through him to the driver's seat, and through that to a darkness that stretched beyond the windshield. What do you want? I asked Peterson. He smiled, and for a moment his face shifted. Still human, but older, more knowing. Like he'd lived for centuries. I want to show you what you've been doing all these years, he said. Every patient you've saved, every life you've touched, you've been collecting them. Every time you help someone, a part of them stays with you. Their gratitude, their relief, their hope. You carry it all. The monitor screen expanded, growing larger until it filled the entire back of the ambulance. On it, I could see faces. Hundreds of faces. People I'd treated, people I'd saved, people I'd lost. This is your real job, Peterson said. Not just treating patients, connecting them, carrying their experiences forward. I was seeing it now. Every emergency call I'd ever run, every patient I'd ever treated. They were all connected, all part of some larger network of care and healing. The boy with the broken arm, you remember him. He became a doctor because of how you treated him. The woman with diabetes, she started taking better care of herself after you explained what would happen if she didn't. The man with the heart attack, he spent his last years helping other heart patients. The faces on the screen were moving, talking, showing me their lives after our encounters. I could see the ripple effects of every ambulance call, every moment of care. But you're not just EMTs, Peterson continued. You're something more. Collectors of human experience, weavers of connection. The ambulance was filling with light now, the same white light I'd seen in the farmhouse, but it wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, comfortable, like being surrounded by every good moment I'd ever had on the job. I don't understand, I said. You don't need to understand. You just need to accept it. This is what you've been doing all along. Jake's voice came from somewhere far away. Lisa, I can see them too. All the patients. They're all here. I looked toward the front of the ambulance and saw Jake surrounded by the same light, the same faces. He was smiling, but his eyes were distant, like he was seeing something I couldn't see. Every EMT, every paramedic, every person who chooses to help others, you're all part of this. You're collecting human moments, human connections, human healing. The monitor was showing vital signs from dozens of people now. All stable, all healthy, all connected to each other through the care they'd received. But why show me this? I asked. Peterson's face shifted again, becoming more like the people on the screen. Because you needed to know. You needed to understand why you do this work, why you chose it, why you stay with it, why it matters. The light was getting brighter, and I could feel myself becoming part of it, not disappearing, but expanding, becoming connected to all the patients I'd ever helped. "You're not just saving lives," Peterson said. "You're saving souls. You're preserving the moments when people choose to help each other, when they choose to care." I could see it now. Every ambulance call was a thread in a larger tapestry. Every patient was a connection point. Every moment of care was a light that would shine forward through time. "The network needs you," Peterson said. "All of you. To keep collecting, keep connecting, keep caring." The light reached its peak, and for a moment I could see everything. Every EMT, every paramedic, every emergency worker, all connected in a web of care that stretched across the world. I understood my purpose now, not just to treat patients, but to be part of something larger, to collect moments of human goodness and pass them forward. "Will I remember this?" I asked. Peterson smiled one last time. "You'll remember what you need to remember." The light began to fade. I woke up in the driver's seat of the ambulance, parked in the driveway of Peterson's farmhouse. Jake was next to me, just opening his eyes. "What happened?" he said. I looked at my watch. 3:45 a.m. We'd been parked for less than 10 minutes. "I don't know," I said. "I think I fell asleep, but I knew that wasn't right. Something had happened, something important. I could feel it in my memory, like a dream that was slipping away." "Did we go inside?" Jake asked. I looked at the farmhouse. It was dark except for a single porch light. Normal house lights, warm and yellow. "I don't remember," I said. "Let's go check on the patient." We got out of the ambulance and walked to the front door. Jake knocked. "Mr. Peterson, County EMS." The door opened, and Peterson stood there in his bathrobe, looking confused. "EMS?" "I didn't call EMS. We received a call about chest pain." I said. "Chest pain? No, I feel fine. I've been asleep for hours." Jake and I looked at each other. The dispatch records would show the call, but Peterson clearly hadn't made it. "Must have been a wrong number," Jake said. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Peterson." "No problem," he said. "Thanks for checking." We walked back to the ambulance. I felt different somehow, like I was seeing things more clearly. The night seemed brighter, more alive. "That was weird," Jake said. "Yeah," I agreed, "but good weird." We got back in the ambulance and drove back to the station. The radio was working perfectly. Cell phones had full signal. All the equipment was functioning normally. But I kept thinking about what had happened, or what I thought had happened. The memory was fading, but the feeling remained. I felt more connected to the job somehow, more aware of how each call mattered, how each patient was part of something larger. Over the next few weeks, I noticed changes. I paid more attention to patients, listened more carefully to their stories. I remembered more details about their lives, their families, their concerns, and sometimes, during quiet moments on calls, I would get flashes of insight, knowing exactly what a patient needed, understanding their fear before they expressed it. Seeing connections between different cases. Jake noticed it too. "You're different," he said one night. "More focused. Like you can see things the rest of us miss." Maybe I could. Maybe that night had opened something in me. Some ability to see the deeper connections between people. Or maybe it was just a dream. A hallucination brought on by too much caffeine and too little sleep. But I don't think so. Because now, every time I respond to a call, I remember that I'm not just treating a patient. I'm collecting a moment, preserving a connection, adding another thread to the tapestry of human care. And sometimes, late at night, when the radio is quiet and the world is still, I can almost see them all, every patient I've ever helped, every life I've touched, all connected in a web of light that stretches across the darkness. I'm part of something bigger now, something that matters, and that knowledge makes every call, every patient, every moment of care worth it, even if I can't quite remember how I learned it.